first meeting in 2020 of the California Board of Psychology. Before beginning today's agenda, I would like to thank the California State Senate, and in particular Senator Glazer and the staff of the Senate Business and Professions Committee, the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee, for their hospitality in hosting us here in these historic settings, particularly here in this Senate chamber, Senate room today. A few logistics items before we begin. Please turn off your cell phones and other devices to silent. It's a bit like a movie theater. And you may notice that board members are accessing their laptops or other electronic devices during the meeting. We are using our devices to access board meeting materials that are in electronic formats, and it's in keeping with our efforts to move to a paper-light, environmentally friendly process. We have allocated time on the agenda for public comment, and we'll ask for public comment on each item. I ask that you be respectful of our time constraints and the need to conduct and complete the board's business. If there are several members of the public seeking to comment on a particular item, I will set a time limit on each speaker to ensure maximum participation by all in the context of a busy agenda. Public comments are instrumental to our hearings, adding to the vibrant discussion on matters before the board. We welcome public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board meeting, to the board taking action on any agenda item. In making public comment, please do not identify any licensee or registrant by the board by name in order to avoid prejudicing future action that may be required of board members in our capacity as a deliberative body in enforcement proceedings. With those logistical items taken care of, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask that Mr. Glass-Steagall please call the roll to establish quorum.
Bernal.
Here.
Kasuga.
Present.
Cervantes.
Here.
Fu.
Here.
Arbsheets.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Rolls taken.
Thank you, Mr. Glass-Steagall. So we'll take on item 2, the President's welcome. So the Board of Psychology protects consumers of psychological services by licensing psychologists, regulating the practice of psychology, and supporting the evolution of the profession. By now, you may have noticed that I'm not the distinguished Dr. Stephen Phillips. It is a shocking difference in appearance. With that said, I want to express on behalf of the board our gratitude to Dr. Phillips for his leadership as board president over the last 4 years. Dr. Phillips has led the board to engage more deeply and thoughtfully with consumers, licensees, and the legislature. I'm thrilled that Dr. Phillips will continue his leadership roles, more on that later, but especially in his unofficial role as board president emeritus. So I'm excited that Dr. Phillips will continue to be here with us and for his continued leadership here. So thank you, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you very much.
I'm also excited to start today's board meeting by congratulating 2 board members. First, Dr. Cheryl Kasuga on her reappointment to the board. And also by congratulating Dr. Shakanda Rogers for her appointment to the board. So we'll take our oath of office for our board members. And so if Dr. Kasuga, you could join me down below, and we will get you sworn in. So we'll have the laws and regs of the Board of Psychology. The latest topic. So I do solemnly swear or affirm.
Dr. Cheryl Kasuga, do solemnly swear
Or affirm. That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California
Against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic.
That I will bear the faith and allegiance.
That I will bear faith and allegiance
To the Constitution of the United States.
to the Constitution of
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Dr.
Thank
Kasuga.
you.
And now if Dr. Rogers could join us. I
Dr. Shakanda Rogers,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, Dr. Rogers. Congratulations to all. And with that, I didn't take a moment to pause and ask if Dr. Phillips, Dr. Rogers, and Dr. Kusuga wanted to make any remarks.
Thank you for your kind words.
I just want to say that I am honored to be part of the board of psychology as an early career psychologist, and I look forward to serving California for the next 4 years.
I would just like to say thank you. I am delighted and honored to be a part of the board. I am grateful. I am humbled. And I'm looking forward to serving the state for the next 4 years and looking forward to being part of the team. And I would like to say a special thank you to my village that came out to support me today. I really
Thank you all. So now I would like to invite Dr. Jacqueline Horn to join us in front. I will turn this over to Dr. Phillips. And Dr. Phillips, please.
So it's been my pleasure for my entire time I've been on the board. Actually, Dr. Horn and I were sworn in on the same day, I believe, at least at the formal board ceremony. That it's been a real privilege and an honor to serve on the board with you. You've been a wonderful friend, colleague, and mentor. And I would like to read, since I guess I'm the one that composed it, I get to read it, the certificate of appreciation presented by the California Board of Psychology to Jacqueline B. Horn, PhD, in recognition of your invaluable contributions to consumer protection, your vast knowledge and depth of experience, your command of language, policy, and practice, and your dedicated and fearless leadership in reimagining the laws and regulations related to licensure and continuing professional development as a member of the California Board of Psychology from May 30th, 2002 to June 1, 2009, and from October 23, 2013 to November 20, 2019.
can hear me in here, right?
But the webcast can't hear you. Your fans from around the world.
Is this on?
Try the other one. Oh, there you go. Try it.
Okay, is it on? Yeah, okay. So, thank you, Stephen. And really, thank you, everyone, and all of you out here who were so nice to me. This has been one of the great honors of my life, being on the board, and I'm particularly looking at Dr. Rogers, who, it turns out, when I was on the board the first time, I signed her license. And so it's very fitting that she comes on in my place. It's a full circle, and I'm really happy to. This is going to be a wonderful experience for you. Great people. And everybody, you know, however we feel about or whatever we think about certain things, we've always come with the foremost in our minds what's best for the consumers in California, and that makes me just really, really proud. And we've worked hard, and y'all certainly know all the work that is entailed in being a board member. And I'm just very, very proud and really happy to have been a part of this. Like I said, it's just been one of the great experiences of my life. So now I'm retiring, but feeling really good about where the board is going and everything. So thank you all. I'm going to miss you all and already do a little bit, even though, I mean, you haven't had a meeting since I've been off, but, you know. Anyway, thanks.
I will. I just want to say that even though Dr. Horn is no longer with the board, a lot of her legacy and the things that she's imparted a lot of things that we'll continue to to keep with like our practice as board members. So we're always going to check grammar on everything and keep some of your thoughts. I mean, your words are always in our mind.
Before moving on, I would just like to say that, Dr. Horn, you've made an indelible mark on the board through your expertise, wisdom, and leadership. And I know from a more personal note, I just learned so much from you. And your perspective's thoughtful, deliberate, and always in the interest of consumer protection. So thank you for your mentorship and for your leadership in helping grow me as a leader. So I thank you so much. I appreciate it. We can't have that. So any public comment on the items in the President's welcome?
I'm sorry, this is the Board of Psychology. We cry all the time.
Yes, this is a public comment for items for the President's welcome. So this is for items related to the swearing in of new board members and for the acknowledgement of Dr. Jackie Horn for public comment.
Oh, well, good, because then I don't have to spend that time talking during public comment. I would just like to thank Dr. Horn because she has always listened and with an open mind, and our organizations come forward for the protection of children because we feel that abuse is being dismissed by your licensees, and that's very important. And I always felt that Dr. Horn listens. And I think that is one of the greatest gifts that we can have on a board. And I also want to welcome our two new board members for our state, and just let you know, you've taken this oath, and as a parent, I feel as if I've taken an oath to be a parent, and it's important to understand the gravity of that, because this board is going to be questioned, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I appreciate that there's new people always coming on, and hopefully you can, I know you'll probably come up to speed on some of the issues that we've had with our our enforcement of enforcing our people who evaluate for family court, and to know that this board can actually make a huge difference in someone's life and save a life. So I thank you for being here, and I thank Dr. Horn for always being here.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing and hearing none, we'll now take up item 3. Item 3 is for public comment on items not on the agenda. Before I invite the speakers to come forward, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions may create a conflict and interfere with the board's capacity to make necessary determinations. Board staff is available to speak to you individually and answer your questions outside of the hearing of board members. The board is eager to listen attentively to your comments, and while there may be a desire to engage in further discussion with comments presented during this time, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter related during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. Although this may give the impression that we're not being responsive, these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance of the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. So with that, public comment for items not on the agenda.
Hi, I'm Catherine Campbell with the California Protective Parents Association, and I thank you today for having this meeting, that we can come together. And I noticed that the meetings have gone from 4 to 3 for this year, so I'm not sure why that happened. And I also have concern that there's less meetings, and what's not on the agenda is the enforcement. I do know in the past when people weren't able to make a meeting, they could call in and just report where they're coming from for the meeting. So I'm concerned that even though this has been a topic for what's happening with enforcement, that there's no new numbers that we can see in the report, even though your enforcement officer isn't here. It's very concerning to the public, especially right before a sunset hearing, and the numbers that are in the sunset review are older numbers. So there's no new data before that meeting, and that's, I think, a disappointment. And I think that's something that needs to be of concern to this board, that that it's not transparent for the public. As you know, we come here because children are being abused and their abuse is being dismissed. We can look at what's happening in our public arena of being able to accept the truth of abuse. And we know New York didn't prosecute Harvey Weinstein in 2015, but they decided to move forward. And that means that we are in a shift of culture to understand that child sexual abuse and abuse to women and men happen, and we need to recognize it. It's not just your licensees actually abusing their patients. It's people coming in who have been sexually abused, and then that abuse is dismissed. And that is very scary to think that this is happening to children. We know children who have had to live with their abuser and they're forced. There's 500,000 people, children in America right now living with their court-ordered abuser, and most of that is based on evaluators. And that's for the U.S. And the numbers for children who are murdered because they're not believed are over 700 since 2008, that they've been murdered by a parent. These situations are extremely, extremely important, and we know that your licensees are part of the equation, and that's why we're here, because we don't want children to die anymore. We don't want children to have to wait till they're 18 to be safe, because we believe, and I do know it's in the Constitution for our state and our country, that every person is allowed to be safe and should be safe, and we're not letting our children be safe because they're being silenced by evaluators and your licensees. And Dr. Jennifer Fried is,
Ms. Hamill, I'm going to ask, you have about a minute left.
okay, thank you. She came up with something that's called institutional courage, based on her years of research that she's done with institutional betrayal. And just like New York was able to now prosecute an abuser, I think we're at the point where we can stand up and say no to abuse, and regardless of what we've done in the past. And she has 10 steps, and I'm going to read them quickly. Comply with criminal laws and civil rights codes, including this board's codes, we need to. Respond sensitively to victims' disclosures. Bear witness, be accountable, and apologize. Cherish the whistleblower. Engage in a self-study. And I was interesting to see that in the Sunset Review documents that 40% say you guys have been doing a great job, and I don't know how many people who have had a complaint closed and dismissed were actually surveyed. So I think that's important to survey those people, because we've been hearing from them, and they're not happy that a valid complaint that would match what the DA needs are being dismissed. Conduct anonymous surveys. Make sure leadership is educated about research on sexual violence and related trauma. Be transparent about data, and I feel as if we're having some problem with that here. Use the power of your company to address the social problems, and commit resources to steps 1 through 9.
Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Hamill. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Is there additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we are going to take an item out of order in recognition of the fact that we have Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer here today. So we're going to take up item number 6, the Department of Consumer's Executive Office update. It's my pleasure to welcome Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer. Ms. Kirkmeyer has a long history with the department. Prior to this appointment, she has been the Executive Director of the Medical Board of California since 2013, and she was Deputy Director from 2011 to 2013. She began her career at DCA, starting as an Associate Governmental Program Analyst in 1999. So glad to welcome you and so glad to have you here today, Ms. Kirkmeyer, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members and Executive Officer Sorek. It's really my pleasure to be here with you today. I have to tell you that your president, I think, took most of my opening comment, though. So, no, I'm just kidding you. Took my background. It's awesome. I don't have to do it. I love it. But it is really my pleasure to be here today, and it really was quite an honor to be appointed by Governor Newsom to be Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. And Consumer Affairs truly has been my home. I've actually been with the department for 30 years, and I joke with all the boards, I've started when I was 10, so... I did say 5, but I couldn't get away with that. So anyway, it has been my honor to really work for the department, and it really has been just where I've grown up with my state career, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. So when this opportunity came to me, I couldn't pass it up, because it really has been truly something that is very near and dear to my heart. I actually, my background with the medical board is very similar to the Board of Psychology, and I know we've worked on some projects together, and with Ms. Sorek, I just, you really have a valued executive officer leading your board, and so I just wanted to make sure that I don't leave without stating that. But I did want to just pass on a few things. I actually sent out an email to department employees and talking about what my initial focus would be, and so I kind of want to pass that on to all of the boards. And I just, Dr. Rogers, your comment about a village and having your village here just really struck me, because that is one of my first items, is really client service and satisfaction, because I really believe that every position within the Department of Consumer Affairs plays a role in the Consumer Affairs mission. And really it's the boards and bureaus whose mission is consumer affairs or consumer protection, really looking at what they're needing to do to protect the public. And it really is our role as the Department of Consumer Affairs to help you meet that mission in providing you the services that you need and providing that client service. And so it really does take a village, and so we all are on together. And so that's one of my first thing is really client services and satisfaction, and just make sure that we can turn the services that we provide into the best experience for the boards and bureaus, and then to the licensees and to the public. Working together, working smarter together, again, using the tools that we have and the creativity that we have within the Department of Consumer Affairs and within the boards and bureaus to make sure that we are doing business using great teams and tools and technology. And then my third one really is data transparency and action. And this is something near and dear to me. I love data, and so data and technology really needs to help us make better informed decisions. And we need to use the data. It's always been something we've asked the boards and bureaus to provide information on the licensing and enforcement numbers, but really we need to also look internally as well. How many regulation packages are we processing per year? How long is it taking to do that? How many packages to hire personnel are we providing, are we doing, and how long does it take us to do that? And to put in some internal tracking tools within our own internal units that we have. And so that's something that we're going to be looking at doing in the future. So with all of those things kind of in mind, my main areas where I'm looking at really is the first one is reducing that time frame for processing regulations. As all of you know, it's taken a while to get your regulations through, and so that's something that we're looking at. I'll be talking just a little bit more about that in a moment. The second thing really is obtaining fiscal reports for the department. I know as a board executive director for the medical board, it was difficult to be able to project where you are with your budget if you don't have the reports that you need. So we're really working on getting those reports finalized and to you. And I will speak about that in a minute too. And then also decreasing the time frame to perform investigations. Obviously, the longer that it takes to investigate an individual, unless you have something that's urgent where you can suspend that licensee, that individual is out there practicing during the time that you're investigating that matter. So we want to make sure that we find tools that we could actually improve that. And we actually will have a report that hopefully will be coming out. I was hoping it by the end of February, but since tomorrow's the end of February, that might not happen. But as soon as possible in the next month, regarding the Division of Investigation and some improvements that we actually are looking to make. And we're actually implementing some of those already. And so I'll be happy to release that report hopefully in the next month. And then last thing is really looking at ADA compliance. We want to make sure that all of the documents that we're putting online are ADA compliant. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally, ensuring that all of the legislation that is passed is actually being implemented by the boards and bureaus. This has been something with the medical board where times where I would have individuals come to me when I was doing speaking engagements to say, hey, how is this other entity implementing this piece of legislation? And so I would just want to make sure that all of us are implementing what has been told that we need to do through the legislature. So I will endeavor to hold one-on-one meetings with each of the boards of the department, but unfortunately right now I'm about 6 individuals shy in my executive unit. I think Mr. Lay is in the back, so I'm not going to give him a bad time about leaving me. But we do have vacancies that we have, and so we will be filling those. Specifically, my chief deputy director and my board and bureau director as deputy director. And so those individuals, once I get those on board, then I'll be setting up those meetings unless something urgent comes up, and then I'm meeting with those on a case-by-case basis. So I do want to let you all know that on January 22nd, 2020, Governor Newsom appointed Lourdes Castrillo Ramirez as the new secretary for the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Previous to Ms. Castro Ramirez, previous to her appointment, was Agency Secretary Podesta. As all of you know, she's been in that role for a long time. And so we really just want to thank her for her service to the board, to the boards and bureaus, and to the Department of Consumer Affairs. She has really been an advocate behind the scenes. I think, a lot of people don't work with her, but she's really been an advocate for the boards and bureaus, and we want to thank her for her service. So speaking of the regulations, I mentioned that earlier. As you may be aware, the DCA Legal Office now actually has a regulation unit, and we've been processing rulemaking proposals from in that unit. And in November, that regulation unit was completely full. So we're happy that they're all on board now and they're all being trained on the regulatory process. A large priority of that unit, though, has really been implementing AB 2138, which I know you all are very familiar with. And so with the assistance of that regulation unit, we're really tracking all of the boards and bureaus to make sure that they get those implemented in order to achieve full compliance by the needed time frame. And then another step that we're working to really improve transparency and efficiency is we are moving to a database called Sharewell that's going to be able to allow the boards and bureaus to track the regulation submission packages. So it will go into this database and it will all be done electronically as it moves through the process. So you'll be able to go in and identify where your regulation package is in the process as it goes along and through. It'll be moving electronically so everybody will be able to see the status of those. For fiscal reports, our DCA budget office actually reached out with the Office of Information Services, and they're in the testing phase of a project that will allow programs to access budget expenditure reports on a similar schedule as the previous aggregate expenditure, I'm having trouble today, expenditure CalSTARS report. Staff are utilizing the data that actually has been received from Fiscal, and we're putting it into Qbert. So for those of you that are used to your licensing and enforcement statistics, that's the same system that we use to gather that information. So we're going to be putting them in Qbert so we can run reports, and it will be available to the executive officers on an ad hoc basis once they get into that system. This year, I know, is sunset year for the Board of Psychology, and their hearings at this point, I think they've, the two dates that have been identified as March 17th and 24th, although we don't have a schedule yet as to which day you'll be presenting on, but we just want to let you know that the department remains committed to working with you to provide support in preparing for these hearings, and we'll continue to communicate as we receive more information. And I know Executive Officer Sorek and I actually have a meeting to discuss the sunset review with members of the administration next week in preparation for the hearing. Regarding a website ADA compliance, the department is continuing its ongoing effort to encourage boards and bureaus to bring all web postings, including meeting materials, into compliance with the American Disabilities Act. Just like the laws that govern physical accessibility, California Government Code requires state agencies to make websites accessible to people with disabilities. And DCA's Office of Information Services is continuing to find ways to bring all of them into compliance by getting the old documents converted to ADA accessible web documents by the end of this year. So we're continuing to work with program staff to ensure that all documents posted actually do meet those requirements. And so we're looking to hire some student assistants. We're looking to get a contractor to be able to come in and assist in that process. So that's kind of a big endeavor that we're going to do by the end of this fiscal year. I think between all the boards and bureaus, I think we have about 2 million pages of documents that need to be turned ADA compliant. So that's something that we're working on right now. The executive officer salary study, the department actually put together a package for changes to the executive officer evaluation and the process to request salary increases based upon the recent salary study that was completed. So we're hopeful that we will have the information to provide to you in the near future regarding these changes. And in addition, I would like to advise you that the request that your board has submitted for Ms. Sorek's pay increase is actually in the review process, and we're hopeful that it should be. We should have some information within the next month regarding that. So we're hopeful on that. And then finally, I'd like to share a bit about our department's Organizational Improvement Office. So this unit, it actually provides DCA programs with change management services, business process mapping, and information technology system requirement documentation. In addition, the unit provides collaborative consulting on process and re-engineering that maximizes utilization of existing resources, improves productivity, and increases quality. And this is actually something, once I went over to the department, I told this unit, I actually said, I actually am really, this is probably my biggest regret, is that I didn't use you. And Ms. Sorek's shaking her head. I tell you, the work that this unit actually has put out has been actually remarkable. I'm just so impressed by the work that they are doing, and they're led by 2 wonderful managers that just really do a great job. So the things that they're working on, they actually are reviewing the DCA centralized services right now, so that's everything that DCA does to help you do your role. And they've actually completed a study study on Legal Affairs Division. They're the ones that did the Division of Investigation study that I just mentioned, and they're finalizing a report right now on the intake unit of the Office of Information Services, so how we meet tickets that are submitted by staff. And then the last one that they just have begun is the Office of Human Resources. So we're looking at how they're doing on the actual hiring of individuals and how that process, and finding streamlined areas where we can actually find better ways to do what we're doing. And so happy about that. And then they're also currently working with 9 boards and bureaus to document and analyze their processes, really to perform their IT system. So I know all of you use Breeze system, but there are other entities outside of those that actually contracted into that. And so they're going through a business modernization process to really look at where they can find efficiencies before they get into the system. And so with that, that concludes my report. I'm just thankful to be here today, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kirkmeyer. Dr. Phillips.
Director Kirkmeyer, I just wanted to say how refreshing it was to have somebody that has on-the-ground experience with the work of the boards and the bureaus. Sometimes I don't think people appreciate what it is we need unless they've been in the place we've been in. So I just think it's remarkable, and we were really thrilled to hear about your appointment.
Thank you so much.
There we go. And I just want to, I've always been a huge fan of Solid. I've kind of spoke their praise since I've been on the board. When you come from a small program, you utilize every pro rata service that the department has. Absolutely. So I continue to keep that theme going. And we made part of our strategic plan to have Solid go through process improvements for our board, and we completed a central services unit. We just started on the licensing unit, and then we'll be doing enforcement as well. So I'm really excited to see the recommendations they have for us on efficiencies and process improvement, and just thank you guys for continuing that program, because I think it's a great service to the boards.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Pass that on to them.
Any additional board comments or questions? Any public comments?
Where is it here?
I think it's like automatic.
Oh, is it automatic? Oh. First, I'm Dr. Jo Linder-Crow. I'm the CEO of the California Psychological Association. Congratulations. Happy to hear that news. I had a quick question about something you referenced, and that was the, you said that there was going to be a change in the regulatory packages would be online, and you'd be able to track. Will that be available to the public, or is that something that's going to only be available to the boards?
It'll just be available to the boards, but the benefit to the public is that Ms. Sorick will be able to put in her board meeting packets exactly where that package is as it goes through the process.
Okay,
So
that would be helpful.
it'll be
Okay,
similar
thank
to
you.
what we have.
Congratulations again.
Any additional public comment? Thank you so much for your time today, Madam Director. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
So we're now going to item number 4, and this is for the President's report with regard to dates and locations. You can find those dates there. I think tomorrow we'll have an opportunity to discuss why there are 3 dates for this year, and certainly, and we'll hear a little bit more about that too, I'm sure, in the Executive Officer's report. And then for committee updates, with regard to committee updates, a couple changes. First, we would like to congratulate and acknowledge that Dr. Mary Harpsheets is going to be the chair of the Licensure Committee.
Thank you.
And that we are also going to have Dr. Rogers on the Outreach and Communications Committee, and we're going to have. And so thank you, Dr. Rogers. There have been very little changes actually to the committee assignments, and so you can see the full committee assignments listed here. With that actually said, though, I do also want to acknowledge that Dr. Tate will be on the Licensure Committee as well. Yay! We're in a very celebratory mood today. I'm all into this. For the most part, changes haven't been made to the committee assignments, but really do want to acknowledge Dr. Tate, Dr. Rogers, and Dr. Harpsheets in their new roles and to these new committees. So thank you. Any board comments on that? Can't get off now. Any public comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to move up to item number 5. Ms. Sorick.
Included in the meeting materials is the executive officer report. You will see that we have 3 current vacancies in the board right now. We have our Breeze licensing coordinator position vacant, our enforcement technician for the person that does the intake is vacant, and the central services manager that was vacated by Ms. Burns is also vacant. We are in the process of putting out recruitment for one of these positions, and the other positions have the workload has been absorbed by existing staff. As mentioned in the board and meeting calendar, we do have a reduced board meetings calendar for the coming year, and that's to address some fiscal issues that we can hear more about tomorrow when the department will give the budget update. So we can look at kind of where we are projected, and for discretionary spending, just looking at where we can make reductions in travel and hotels for board meetings was an area that was identified as something we could monitor our spending on. So I just wanted to kind of briefly mention that today, and then we'll get more into the budget report tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions about the executive officer's report? Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on the executive office report? All right, seeing none. Before moving to items 7 and 8, I just want to acknowledge Patrick Lay from the Assembly Business and Professions Committee for joining us here today. Thank you, and your colleagues' times for doing sunset review with us. So for item 7, discussion approval of the board meeting minutes, Mr. Glassbeagle.
Attached in your meeting materials is the board meeting minutes from the 2 previous meetings that have not yet been voted on, and I didn't bring my packet, so agenda item 7 is for...
October 3 to 4.
There you go. And 8 is?
November 8th.
Perfect. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the minutes, or?
Do we have a motion?
Second?
So we have a motion on a second to approve the minutes on October 3rd and 4th. Ms. Marks, is it possible for us to do both board meetings in one motion, or should we do them separately?
I would recommend that you do them separately, just because you already have a motion on the one.
Okay, great.
I have a question. I know that the October meetings minutes have been amended, so should the motion state as amended from the draft?
Amended in terms of the
initial draft?
Well, this is the one we're voting on, I think.
This is the one we're voting on, okay. I see it here. Sorry.
No worries.
So as presented, I believe.
As presented.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Any public comment?
I just have a question about page 16 and 17. These are the minutes that reflected the conversation about the stakeholder meeting that was held with the Center for Judicial Excellence people. I noticed that there's a generic reference to the syndrome rather than actually being specific about the nature of both my comments and Dr. Winkleman's comments. What we were talking about there is parental alienation syndrome. And I'm wondering if for the minutes, that could be clarified so that it's very specific about what that conversation referenced. Otherwise, it seems rather generic and particularly vague.
Sounds like a bad science fiction movie.
It does. The syndrome.
Can you tell us what item number
Yes, well,
on
let's
this
see.
side? Or no?
It's on page 16 of the,
So I think this is
it's
page,
agenda item number 27 in the minutes.
so this is page 26 out of 161 on your PDFs, and I
Oh,
believe
okay.
Dr.
Sorry.
Linda Crow is probably referencing lines 681 through 694, unless that's mistaken. Dr.
Well, I've got the book and the lines are different, I think. I'm referencing the paragraph that begins, Dr. Linda Crow commented that action item 1 is already a requirement under the California Rules of Court.
Great, so this is line 696.
Okay, line 696 in here. On action item number 2, Dr. Linda Crow commented that using the correct language is hugely important and that the journal and the April board meeting minutes did not clearly explain what this screening entailed. And then it goes on to say, on the next page, Dr. Winkleman said she has spoken with many experts about parental alienation. She says that there is widespread disbelief in this syndrome. So I get that it was referenced, but maybe if we could be just a bit more specific, that would be helpful, I think.
So essentially insert parental alienation on line 706 in front of syndrome.
Yes.
Actually, on line 705, after parental alienation, add the word syndrome. That would make it clear, I think. Believe so?
Yes, that would help.
I want to make a distinction. There's parental alienation.
Yes.
And there's
And
parental
then there's-
alienation syndrome.
Right, and that was the important distinction
So,
in the language.
Dr. Winkleman had talked to people about parental alienation as a general topic.
Correct.
And there's a widespread disbelief in parental alienation.
That's right, and that's distinct. So you're right. So there is
Maybe-
parental alienation, which is sometimes happens, and then there is parental alienation syndrome, which has largely been debunked.
Correct.
So we want to be clear that it would be helpful, I think, for future reference.
If you crossed out the word, in 706, cross out the word "this" and insert parental alienation.
Yes, I think that might, yes.
And then if there's a reference to syndrome thereafter, we know that we're talking about parental alienation.
Yes, yes. Would that be, if that would be possible, that would be helpful, I think.
Is that amenable to Dr. Tate, the maker of the motion?
I will change my motion to include Dr. Linda Crow's recommendations.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very
Gilliland.
much.
All right. Are there additional board comments or public comments? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. Glassbeagle, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Bernal? Aye. Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Arbsheets?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Rogers? Tate?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Glassbeagle, can I ask a technical question? We can't all leave our microphones on. We have to turn them off so that other microphones operate. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about how this room is set up to function.
No? There's not a maximum number of microphones? Okay.
It's better for the sound if I just hear one of you at a time,
All right, so item 8 then, for approval of board meeting minutes for November 8th, 2019. Mr. Glassbeagle?
Attached in your materials is the minutes from November 8th, 2019, and I'm available for any questions.
Hi, good morning. I have a quick question. This is the one where we were on a conference call, right? Yes. And then I think, Dr. Phillips, you helped me, there was a clarification on some of what events I did attend and what we didn't. Was that supposed to be addressed in this?
I believe there was a date that was in question, and we clarified it, and that is reflected in the minutes.
Is it? Okay, I didn't see it. Do you know?
There was a question about your attendance, and you had not attended that meeting. It was
a different one, right, that I had attended. But that's,
Right.
no, but my question is, was that supposed to be in these minutes? The clarification on that?
It's in the sunset report.
Okay.
Not in the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any additional questions?
I move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Tate, seconded by Dr. Phillips. Is there public comment on this item? Seeing and hearing no public comment and no additional board discussion, could you please call the roll, Mr. Glassbeagle?
Bernal. Aye. Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Rogers. Tate.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. So we're now going to take a break so that we can set up for the 10:30 petition hearing. So we will come back around 10:32-ish, just so that we give enough time for the administrative law judge and others to set up. All right? Board of Psychology meeting, and I'm going to turn this over to Judge Bennett for the proceedings here today. Your Honor?
Thank you. My name is Wilbert Bennett. I'm an administrative law judge at the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to sit with the board to hear these matters today and to prepare a written decision setting forth the brief. I'm sorry, I'm going to start over again because I realize I hadn't turned on the red light. So now I'm being recorded. Okay. My name is Wilbert Bennett. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to sit with the board in the hearing of these matters today and to prepare a written decision setting forth the reasons supporting the board's decision. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. We are here today to review the petition for early termination and or modification of probation of Molly O. Griffin. And this matter is being heard before the Board of Psychology. This matter bears agency case number 600-2019-000580 and Office of Administrative Hearings case number 2019-121049. Will all the members of the board please identify themselves for the record, beginning with on my left?
Dr. Cheryl Kasuga.
Alita Bernal.
Dr. Leah Tate.
Seiran Fu.
Dr. Mary Harb Sheets.
Dr. Stephen Phillips.
Maricela Cervantes.
Dr. Shakanda Rogers.
A quorum of the board is present. And just briefly, let me indicate that in this proceeding, the board is concerned with hearing about any rehabilitation since the petitioner's license was disciplined. The Deputy Attorney General will proceed first to submit the petition for reinstatement and any accompanying materials into evidence, and to provide a case summary in this matter. After that, the petitioner will have an opportunity to make a presentation. And this is a reminder that the board has had the benefit of reading the petition package so that the petitioner does not have to repeat anything in that package. The petitioner will be subject to questioning by both the board members and the Deputy Attorney General. After the hearing, the board will go into closed session to deliberate. You will not receive a letter, you will not receive a decision today, but the petitioner will receive it in the mail sometime in the future. At this time, let me take the appearance of the record, for the record, and beginning with the Deputy Attorney General.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is John Gatschet, G-A-T-S-C-H-E-T. It's a pleasure to appear before you again.
Okay, and petitioner, Dr. O'Malley?
Dr. Molly O'Griffin.
Dr. O'Malley,
Molly O'Griffin.
Dr. O'Griffin, I'm sorry.
Right. I'm here today representing myself.
And you're representing yourself today. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to turn things over to the Deputy Attorney General, who will begin with a case summary of this matter.
Briefly, ladies and gentlemen of the board, the petitioner was issued her license in June of 2009. Her license is current but is inactive. The reason that it is inactive is that she had a decision that was effective October 3rd, 2014, that placed her license on probation for 5 years. I'm going to highlight some of the terms that were placed as part of that probation. She was required to undergo a board-mandated physical examination, be under a practice monitor, undergo board-mandated psychotherapy, undergo ongoing treatment with the board for substance abuse, abstain from alcohol and drugs, and undergo urine drug testing. There were other terms of that stipulation. Included in the stipulation were admissions to a conviction on January 29th of 2014 for a violation of disturbing the peace. The underlying accusation that gave rise to placing her license on probation occurred June 21st, 2012, when she was arrested for DUI, and then June in 2013 when she was convicted for that DUI, as well as being in possession of nitrous oxide, pursuant to Penal Code 381, subsection B. Petitioner is making her petition for early termination, but her probation at this time remains in told status with no completion date. She's actually never done a day of probation because she's not had employment. And so from the day that she was placed on probation, her probation entered told status. Petitioner's overarching request is to terminate her probation because she's had difficulties in gaining employment. And so that is the overview of the case. Your Honor, would you like me to now go through the exhibits one by one?
Yes, please.
So in your exhibit packet, which you have in front of you, we have a number of documents, and so I've broken those down for ease as we go through the questioning today. Exhibit number 1 is the notice of hearing. I'd ask that be marked for identification and moved into evidence. And then, Your Honor, if you'd like, I can go through all the exhibits, and then at the very end, we can move them all at the same time. Exhibit 2 is the certificate of licensure, setting forth petitioner's license status with the board. Exhibit 3 for identification is the decision and order 1F-22-227916. Exhibit 4 for identification was the petitioner's petition to this board, as well as the narrative statement that she provided to the board, and that's pages 26 to 46. Exhibit 5 is a medical record of a CT scan that was performed January 30th of 2012. Exhibit 6 is Social Security benefit paperwork petitioner provided with her petition. Exhibit 7 is a letter from House of Change. Exhibit 8 is TLC Clean and Sober Living Home at page 51. Exhibit 9 is a receipt for Boda Recovery Residences, which was attached to petitioner's packet, at pages 52 to 56. Exhibit 10 is an IDAA full scholarship that petitioner references in her petition packet. Exhibit 11 is a letter from a Save a Life Wellness Center. Exhibit 12 is documentation from UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Medicine at page 60. I would note that the Attorney General's Office is also going to be mentioning, as we go through these identification exhibits, that we have marked for a confidential sealing order. Exhibit 12 is on that request, and I've shared that with petitioner. Exhibit 13 is paperwork from the California Victim Compensation Program. Exhibit 14 is an MRI from Alameda County Medical Center, and that has been marked to be sealed as part of the sealing order. Exhibit 15 are physician notes from UCSF, documentation and referrals, pages 63 to 65. I've requested that Exhibit 15 be part of the sealing order. Exhibit 16 is a Petaluma Health Center exemption for online CE coursework. Exhibit 17 is a health record from Follow My Health, and that's part of the sealing request as well at page 67. Exhibit 18 are credentialing search insurance issues provided by the petitioner, as the same with Exhibit 19, Exhibit 20, Exhibit 21, Exhibit 22, and Exhibit 23. And those are either rejection emails for job applications or difficulties with her credentialing search process. Exhibit 24 is a Social Security earnings report, and I've asked that that be sealed as Exhibit 24. Exhibit 25 are CE coursework list and certificates, pages 80 through 87. Exhibit 27, 28, and 29 are 3 letters from therapist Chris Hodson, PhD, and I've asked that those all be part of the sealing order. Exhibit 30 is an evaluation face sheet filled out by Dr. Catherine Bernard, PhD. Exhibit 31 is an evaluation by Dr. Catherine Bernard, PhD, dated April 19, 2019. I've asked that be included in the sealing order. Exhibit 32 is peer-to-peer in the Southeast documentation. Exhibit 33 is therapy information. Exhibit 34 is additional therapy information with a new therapist started April 25th, 2019. Exhibit 35 is evidence of lack of practice monitor paperwork. Exhibit 36 are authorizations for release of information. Exhibit 37 are a series of recommendation letters, and those start at Exhibit 38, which is a letter from a Matthew Polachek. Exhibit 39, a letter from a Dr. Peter Van Oot. And then we've got the documentation that was provided by the board in the underlying investigation. Exhibit 40 is petition for early termination report of Special Investigator Walker. Exhibit 41 is a probation report dated July 24, 2019, documented by probation monitor Curtis Gardner. Exhibit 42 is a probation profile. Exhibit 43 is correspondence with probation. Exhibit 44 is intake documents for probation. Exhibit 45 are the quarterly reports and chronological record with probation with the board. Exhibit 46 is cost recovery information. I would note that the petitioner has paid her cost recovery in this case, and that won't be at issue today. Exhibit 47 are probation violations. There's been some citations issued that the board can review. Exhibit 48 is a probation interview that was conducted November 20th, 2019. Exhibit 49 is a list of prescription medications taken by the petitioner dated 12/10/2019. I've asked that be part of the sealing order. Exhibit 50 is a probation interview, December 30th, 2019, a continuing interview with Special Investigator Walker. Exhibit 51 is email correspondence between Special Investigator Walker and petitioner. Exhibit 52 is petitioner's marijuana recommendation information that was provided to the board investigation after the first interview. Exhibit 53 are additional probation file documents. Exhibit 54 is the final probation report dated January 9, 2020, signed by probation monitor Curtis Gardner. Exhibit 55 is a psych report for an 820 that was conducted by Dr. Abeg on behalf of the board, and I've asked that that document be included in the petition and included in the request for protective order. Exhibit 56 is Dr. Abeg's CV. And then finally, we have another document that was provided today by the petitioner, and the stack is with Your Honor, to be handed out to the board. It's a medical record from this year, February 25th, 2020, some medical information regarding petitioner, and that will be added as Exhibit 57. I'm asking that that also be part of the sealing order, and that would be pages 357 to 360. And so those are the documents in the packet. I'd ask that those documents be admitted into evidence subject to the sealing order request and at this time for all purposes. Thank you.
Nope, I don't have any objection. Are you short one? Because I have one extra.
I think we have two board members that can share.
Yeah, perhaps board members can share that, and that's what she proposed as Exhibit 57. Okay, there being no objection to the introduction of the petition package, each of the four named coordination documents will be submitted as Exhibits 1 through 57. And with respect to the protective order sealing confidential records, that motion will be granted. And let the record reflect, and we can confirm this, Dr. Griffin, that you've been presented with a copy of this order. So let the record reflect that a copy of this order has been given to all parties on the record, and that what is covered in this order, protective order, sealing confidential records, are all of the exhibits that are referenced in the protective order, specifically exhibits 12, 14, and 15, 17, 24, 27 through 29, 31, 49, and 55, and also 57.
Okay.
So let the record so reflect. Now, at this point in the proceeding, Dr. Griffin, this is your opportunity to present your case, and I would note again for the record, as it's set forth in the Board of Psychology guidelines for arguments of this nature, that the testimony should focus on evidence of rehabilitation and why there's no longer a risk to reoffend. That's sort of what your target is here. And the focus is not in rehashing any previous decisions unless they're relevant to the subject of rehabilitation. And
Yes.
Okay. Please proceed as you deem appropriate, and of course, after you give your testimony and presentation, both the deputy treasurer and any of the board members that will have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions, any questions that are relevant to the issue of your case. So please proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Your Honor, and the board for having me today. As I said, I'm representing myself in this matter. I just got out of the hospital a few days ago, so if I am a little short on breath, let me know and I can try and be louder. I believe that the court should find in favor of my appeal for two reasons. One, I have thoroughly rehabilitated myself, and two, the stipulation prevents me from becoming employed. Today, I bear the burden of proving to you that I am ready for the relief of having my license off of formal probation. Although I didn't start off feeling much gratitude about being on probation, now I see it as a timely intervention that saved my life, for which I am grateful. I'm now going to briefly provide you a bit of background I think is important you understand, how my family of origin and developmental experiences contributed to my license being put on probation. My father was an ER doctor and a high-functioning alcoholic. My birth mother perpetrated violence upon me as a child. I was forcibly removed from her and put into my father's custody following foster care. My stepmother was an artist and a singer and a performer. She was what is referred to by some as hippie royalty. She was a lead singer of a 60s psychedelic rock and roll band. Although they reported meaning well, their laissez-faire parenting style failed to give me a functional sense of cause and effect, especially as it pertained to my behavior. They all kept me from experiencing consequences, probably an attempt to soften my life from its hard beginning. It didn't serve me as an adult at all. It left me wildly unprepared for adult behaviors in an adult life. Now, Your Honor, I would like to provide you and the board a brief timeline of events that led to my license being disciplined. In 2009, I was finally licensed and started a small practice. Then in 2011, my divorce was finalized after 13 years. 2012, two pivotal events happened that changed my life forever. I received a paralyzing brainstem injury from domestic violence, and then I got a DUI later that year. In February 2013, the board ordered me to cease practice and ordered me to complete a psych battery, which they graciously paid for, to assess my fitness to practice. I was cited for disturbing the peace maybe a week after I got out of Aboeg's office. I simply could not get out of my own way. A year later, in 2014, just as my evaluator, Dr. Aboeg, decided I was fit to practice, I was arrested again, but never charged, which resulted in my license being revoked, pending probationary terms, where I am right now. Now I'm going to start to shift gears and allow the court to see how I've spent the last 6 years getting a support system and rebuilding my entire life. Following my DUI, I entered sober living. I received an accurate diagnosis and rehab for my spinal cord injury, which is something that Dr. Aboeg wanted me to do. I'm still an active member of International Doctors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm engaged to a non-addict who has also lost his career due to a spinal cord injury. It was my behavior that led to my license being put on probation. I accept complete and full responsibility for my license being disciplined. I have paid my fine in full to the board as of January 2019. At the time of my license trouble, I was not practicing and didn't have any active clients at the time of my arrest and my conviction. I take full responsibility for harming the reputation of my field. My sometimes non-professional behavior and demeanor could have been harmful to one of my former patients that I spoke to Dr. Abreg about. If this were to happen today, I would handle it quite differently. I remember my earliest learnings in law and ethics directing me to inform the board in writing should my mental, emotional, or physical stability be compromised to the point of bringing harm to those with which I work. Now I place critical value on my sobriety as a human being and as a practitioner. I've had an inner paradigm shift, and I have committed to my sobriety. I have gained insight into my issues and triggers through therapy and mindfulness. Finally, I place far greater value on the privilege of holding a license as a psychologist and the public responsibilities necessary to provide mental health services to society. I will obtain various insurances to prevent me against anything catastrophic that might arise. I will ensure continuity of care for all of my patients by utilizing my professional relationships. I can assure the board that if I am granted the relief, I will not reoffend. I say this because I am no longer self-medicating, and I am receiving the highest level of medical care for my spinal cord injury, and more recently, diagnosis of fibromyalgia. I have been properly treated and monitored by my former doctors at the Napa Pain Institute. They managed my dosage and provided other treatment modalities such as spinal cord injections since December 2015. As of January 2020, I have discontinued my morphine-based medications, and I am no longer a patient of the Napa Pain Institute. Now, my general practitioner, Dr. Leon, is attending to me, and that was the paperwork that I just passed out. My treatment team also includes my podiatric surgeon, who just completed my second Achilles lengthening procedure to improve my mobility. My general practitioner and neurologist, Dr. Luton, recommend my use of medical marijuana instead of opiates. I have complied to the best of my ability to meet the conditions of my probation, with the exception of 2 citations, and most importantly, except for being able to get a job. Even though my probation had to be ongoingly told because I couldn't obtain employment, I continued to try and meet all of the terms and conditions. I would take it off of told, thinking I was going to get a job, and then they would say no. And so it was like back and forth. It was very frustrating. Let's see. Even though my probation had to be ongoingly told because I couldn't obtain employment, I continued to try and meet all the conditions. My license reads as revoked. No insurance or governmental agency can be allowed to reimburse my salary, making it impossible for me to fully comply with all of my probationary terms. I have had 30-plus job interviews in the last 6 years, and I've never been hired or offered a job. I have taken coursework in the areas of addiction, inhalant use, trauma, brain injury, and the neurobiology of substance abuse. And I have sought therapy and gained insights into trauma and brain injury and how addiction can be made worse by both. I have learned to navigate my way successfully to the right medical care and engage my treatment and support teams. In the last 6 months since writing this appeal, I have had a new psychological evaluation and found a new therapist after relocating. Like I said, I enrolled for 2 years in sober living following my conviction. I have had 5+ years of random urine analysis at Napa Pain Institute office, proving that there have been no other substances in my urine except what I was prescribed. I have learned many things in treatment programs that have affected me in the long run. I have learned to live every day as a sober person. I have become acutely aware of how professionals are viewed by the general public. I had a significant inner shift take place in order to maintain my sobriety. For the now almost 6th year, in a few months, I'll have 6 years in September. My sobriety date is September 13th, 2014. I have learned to become aware of potential triggers and harmful places. I never even want to think of going back to the old life of people and places that led me further down a downward spiral, where my entire life hung in the balance. I am proud of myself for conquering and transcending one of the biggest obstacles I have faced. Now I can cope with my life without the use of substances. I have tried with limited resources to stay as current in the field and still challenge myself. I volunteered for NAMI in San Francisco for 4 years, training volunteers to become teachers so that they could teach the Intro to Psych course to the general public. I'm an active member of IDAA and volunteer for a weekend convention in 2015 in Palm Springs. I'm grateful to finally have the appropriate level of medical care because I was initially misdiagnosed with conversion disorder instead of a spinal cord injury. It turns out UCSF refused to give me an MRI because I felt too claustrophobic going into the machine, so they didn't do it. Although I've had no cravings or inclination to use, I've had a relapse prevention plan. Since being sober, I have had many significant life stressors happen, such as the loss of my ex-husband to an overdose in March of 2019. I maintain my sobriety with even more resolve than before. In conclusion, I cannot complete the terms of my probation. I cannot discern whether it is my potential employer's perception of my physical limitations or in my ability to not work a regular schedule, or is it because my time is not billable? Because of the status of my license, it has been my experience that I am unemployable. Now I would like to appeal to the board and your honor to grant me the relief of lifting the revocation and formal probationary terms from my license. If the board were to grant me the relief, I would commence with baby steps into a small private practice in my new community, where I can restore the spinal breach between me and my dignity. I will conclude with this. My stepson wrote The Hero's Journey in an English class. He used me and saw me as a hero. That solidified that I had made it and come full circle. I represent to you as the hero of my own journey. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. I just want to clarify, first of all, I'm sorry, I've forgotten to, thank you, Dr. Griffin. I just want to ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
Exhibit 57, which you just came in to evidence, references Molly O'Griffin Khan. Is that a legal name change, or?
That is what I married the guy that passed away in March, and in honor of his passing, I decided to keep it.
Okay.
The Khan. So in my license, it's O'Griffin, but then on my driver's license, it's Khan.
Okay, you're also
Khan.
known as
Right.
O'Griffin, Molly O'Griffin Khan.
But professionally, I'd rather keep it just O'Griffin.
Oh, I understood. I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing, exhibits 55, 56, and 57 are all current documents that you're offering
That's right.
through the petition package. Are there any other documents that you wish to offer?
No, just the updated medication list, and that my Dr. Leon is now taking over my care. That was it.
Okay. And the other thing is, are you going to have witnesses today?
Yes, I have one witness.
Okay, why don't we, at this point, since you've testified, ask Mr. Gachette if he has any questions at this point?
I do.
Okay.
All right. Dr. Griffin, I want to go back to the June 21st, 2012 arrest for DUI. What substances were you under the influence when that DUI occurred?
Nitrous, oxide, and marijuana.
During that time period, were you also abusing benzodiazepines?
Not abusing, no. I had a doctor's prescription written for them for PRN when I had acute panic attacks.
And do you remember which benzodiazepine you had a prescription for?
I had Xanax.
Do you remember the dosage?
I think 1 milligram or something small.
At the time that you were using nitrous oxide and marijuana, were you also taking those prescriptions for Xanax?
Not as frequently. I found the nitrous oxide to calm me, kind of like the Xanax, and so I wouldn't use them together.
And in June of 2012, up until that point, how long had you been using nitrous oxide?
Maybe 6 months. I had just newly been exposed to it.
And then after your arrest in June of 2012, did you ever use nitrous oxide again?
Yes, I did.
Approximately how many times and over what period?
Probably 6 more times until the arrest in 2014, the very last one, where I was, that was my sobriety date.
And that's September of 2014?
That's correct.
During your interview with Ms. Walker from the board, there was some confusion regarding whether your sobriety date was January 2014 or September 2014. Do you, as you sit here today, do you know why there was that confusion?
Yeah, I do remember the confusion because there was a marijuana sobriety date and the nitrous oxide sobriety date. And so that was the confusion.
And when you say your sobriety date from September 2014, you're just referencing nitrous oxide as a substance. Are there any other substances you're referencing?
No, just the nitrous oxide.
It is true that you have medical marijuana that you use at this time?
That's correct.
Okay, and you received a recommendation for that after your first interview with the board, is that correct?
That's correct.
Prior to that first interview with the board, you had not received a medical recommendation for marijuana?
No, I'd had one actually at the time that I got arrested in 2012, but they said it wasn't used, I couldn't use it because it was from the wrong county.
And then aside from that, between 2012 recommendation and the recommendation you received in 2019, did you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, I've had pretty much consecutive recommendations since then.
Do you believe you've ever had a problem with marijuana?
No. I think my doctors, especially my neurologist, thinks that it's very important that I shift away from opiates towards marijuana because it's less harsh on the body.
And that would be your current physicians. I'm just asking, in your time using marijuana, do you feel like you've ever abused marijuana?
No.
All right. Now, at this time, it also appears, based on the documentation you provided in Exhibit 57, that you have a prescription for 2 milligrams of clonazepam and then a prescription for 4 to 6 50-milligram tablets of tramadol. Is that correct?
That's correct. I've recently transferred off of the Percocet and onto the tramadol. My Dr. Leon thinks that it's much more efficacious to have tramadol as well as Lyrica for the fibromyalgia.
And so you take the tramadol and the clonazepam as well as the medical marijuana?
PRN as needed, yeah. I'm trying to go away from using the tramadol and using primarily the medical marijuana for the pain. But when it is the breakthrough pain, then I can use the tramadol if I need it.
You referenced the Napa Pain Institute. While you were with the Napa Pain Institute, was their policy that you were not to take marijuana?
No alcohol and no marijuana.
You referenced that you had 5 years of testing at the Napa Pain Institute. Did you provide any of the records from that as part of your petition here today?
Yes, I did. I got the entire record, but I didn't put it in. But I made it available to Nicole for if she wanted to talk to them about it. I have the record in the car, too.
Okay, but the question, I think, is it part of this petition packet that's submitted with the board?
No, but it should be.
All right. I want to talk to you about the terms and conditions of the stipulation with the board. Exhibit 3 is in the packet, if you can turn to it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically page 20, and the AGO pages are on the bottom right-hand corner. If you, that's the 20 we're talking about. Nope, that 20.
Okay.
All right, and that's your signature agreeing to this stipulation?
Yes, it is.
And then Exhibit 44, which is kind of towards the back of the packet, pages 200 to 203. And that's the disciplinary order at 200 and the subsequent pages. Are those your initials next to each of those terms and conditions?
Yes, they are.
All right, so you understood that when you entered this stipulation that these terms and conditions, you were knowingly and freely entering into an agreement with the board to comply with these terms?
Absolutely.
And you acknowledged these terms when you did so?
Yes, sir.
Now, isn't it true that you've not done a physical examination with the board as requested?
I have done a physical exam, but I was under the impression that I had to get a job in order to do that. But I have also, but despite being not able to get a job, I did do a physical exam with Dr. Leon.
Okay, but with the board, and so the question I had is through the board process, did you do a physical examination?
No.
And did you do a practice monitor during a period of probation through the board?
I was never able to become employed, so I couldn't get a practice monitor.
And so the question is just, did you ever complete a practice monitor through the board?
No.
Thank you. I know that there was ongoing treatment that was listed through the board, and I know you've listed quite a bit of ongoing treatment that you've done on your own. Mm-hmm. Did you ever do ongoing treatment through the board's program?
No.
Did you ever do urine testing through the board's program?
Nope.
And so the board itself has no record, correct, of you being abstinent from substances?
They don't, because all of that was conditional to being employed.
And you never completed board psychotherapy through a board-approved psychotherapist, is that correct?
I actually did. Dr. Hodson was one. She wrote to the board.
She wrote to the board, but was she approved by the board?
I do believe she was, yeah, to see me. Mm-hmm.
And when did you see Dr. Hodson?
That, I believe, was 2013 and 14.
Did the board tell you at some point to discontinue seeing Dr. Hodson?
Oh, no, she actually retired, so I couldn't see her anymore. I had to find someone new.
Did you find someone new in 2014?
I found someone new, and then just recently I had to relocate, so I found someone new again.
And do we have records from the person you found after 2014?
Yes.
Well, who's that?
That would be Dr. Barnard, who did another evaluation, and then Dr. Lucas Plum, who I saw briefly, and then now I'm seeing Dr. Anela Dalrymple.
Okay.
Anela Dalrymple.
Can you spell that last name?
Let me see, D-O-W-R, let me write it down, okay, Dalrymple. D-O-W-R-I-M-P-L-E.
And do we have any records from that treating psychotherapist?
No, just that she is, I've seen her 4 times, and I'm starting out with her.
So we have no evidence from her today?
No.
And you had mentioned Dr. Bernard after Dr. Hodson. Isn't it true that you didn't see Dr. Bernard until 2019?
That's true, because the board called me and said that I need to surrender my license, and the only other option was to start this process of the appeal. And so I went and got a new psych eval, because Dr. Hodson's one was years old, and so I saw her for the 6 sessions to do the psych eval.
You said the board told you to surrender your license, isn't it?
They asked me to, sorry.
Okay. And isn't it true the board asked you that because you had not gained employment for a period of time, and that appeared that potentially because you were on told status, that might be something that was an option to you to take care of? They didn't tell you to do that?
Right, they made it either do this or do that, and so I decided to go ahead with the new evaluation.
Okay. And so when I had asked earlier after Dr. Hodson, there was no psychotherapy records between 2014 and 2019?
Let's see, 14, yeah, I took a few years off in between.
And if you were on board psychotherapy, are you aware that you would have been continuing with a therapist throughout that period of time?
Yes.
So you did not comply with that term, is that fair?
Well, I was under the understanding that I had to be seeing a therapist if I had a job. And since I couldn't get a job, my understanding was that I didn't have to, being told, I didn't have to see the therapist until I got a job.
And I understand that your contention is that because your probation was told. I'm just asking the mere question, did that term get completed?
I don't think it did.
Okay, thank you. All right. In looking at the exhibits that you provided, Exhibit 25, page 67.
Mm-hmm.
Exhibit 25, page 67. Are we there?
Yep, 25. 75, let's see, let me go back.
Oh, maybe we have a tab off or two.
Right.
Well, at least we got bait stamps.
7.
Counselor, did you say exhibit?
I'm sorry, not 25. That's my mistake. I'm throwing her off. 17.
17, all right.
That might make it easier.
There we go.
I apologize. Exhibit 17, page 67. Okay. This is a list of health issues that you had as of, appears May 22nd, 2019. On the list, it says active cognitive dysfunction. Can you describe for me what that means?
Active cognitive dysfunction is sometimes can't remember the right word or get my words backwards, or sometimes it takes me a little while to formulate my idea, or I'll be impulsive and just blurt it out. And so it's kind of a process of slowing down and formulating my thoughts so that it can be clear.
Have you been evaluated by a neuropsychologist at any time since being placed on probation?
Neuropsych. I want to say I've seen one, but I don't know if it was a full evaluation.
As far as you know, a neuropsychologist has not done a full workup for you regarding your cognitive abilities at this time?
No, I think that there was a little bit of that included in Dr. Abweg's testing.
Okay. He's a forensic psychologist, not a neuropsychologist. Are you aware of that?
I'm not, but now I am.
Okay. In exhibit, I'm going to check the number this time because I'm referring to the page. Exhibit 29, page 91, and that's a documentation from Dr. Hodson. He stated that you had a history replete with trauma, and she sometimes does not follow through with required steps. She sometimes returns to abusive situations. What was he describing there?
It's a she.
She, I'm sorry.
And she was, where was that one? Right here?
Yeah, second paragraph.
She is describing that basically her understanding was because of the trauma, I sometimes have a hard time following through with simple things like getting a letter out or following up with little paperwork things. And that in the time we were seeing each other, I went back to an abusive person and was arrested again. And so she was working with me to try and completely get rid of people like that in my life.
In looking at that, it also said responding to court or to the board in a timely manner. Are you aware that board probation gives the board an opportunity to determine whether you're actually able to follow required steps?
Yes.
Okay. And as we discussed earlier, a number of the terms of probation you've not been able to do because you were not employed and so your probation remained told. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Dr. Bernard, and that's Exhibit 31, page 93.
Okay.
Now, in Dr. Bernard's letter to the board, she stated that you would be fine to be off probation, but isn't it true that she also stated you should be monitored for a period of 3 years, have professional coaching, and undergo psychotherapy in order to be safe to practice?
Yes, and I totally agree with that because it's been many years that I've worked, and so I kind of need someone to kind of coach me professionally to a better place, as well as I think I'm going to be I know I'm going to be in therapy for the rest of my life, so ongoing therapy is essential.
And so practice monitoring, professional coaching, and undergoing psychotherapy, those are part of your probation terms, are they not?
They are, yes.
And the only way the board can monitor those terms would be to have you on probation. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
And isn't it also true that Dr. Bernard referred and referenced Dr. Abeg's report in her letter?
Yes, I do believe she did.
It's right there, third paragraph, that Dr. Bernard agreed with Dr. Abeg in her evaluation of 2014. All right, let's turn to Exhibit 55, and that's the paperwork I provided you. It should be, might not have a tab for you, but we mailed it to you after we sent the binder.
Okay.
Did you insert the report into your binder today or no?
The one that I brought?
No, the letter that I sent you. Here, what I'll do is I'll hand you a copy of Dr. Abeg's report.
Okay.
All right. Are you familiar with Exhibit 55, Dr. Abeg's report?
Yes, I am.
And do you remember being interviewed on 3 separate occasions by Dr. Abeg, 2 in person and 1 over the phone?
Absolutely.
And that Dr. Abeg spent a total of 6 hours interviewing you?
Yes, he did.
Were you truthful when you spoke to Dr. Abeg?
Yes, painfully so.
Are you aware that Dr. Abeg defined your answers to questions on your past substance abuse as, quote, defensive, minimizing, and inconsistent? And that's at page 334.
Yes.
Now, you stated just a moment ago that you were painfully truthful with Dr. Abeg. Why were you not more painfully truthful regarding your substance abuse history?
Well, when I initially met Dr. Abeg, I was very flooded and very full of feelings, and I think that part of that, I wanted to appear better than I was, and I wasn't as forthcoming. But then in the third time that we met, I let my guard down and was able to be honest with him.
In Dr. Abeg's report, he talks about your marijuana use. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, indicated to you that it was probably beneficial for you to quit marijuana for your overall health.
That's right.
And you agreed with that.
At the time I did.
As you sit here today with this petition, now that you're on medical marijuana, you disagree with that.
That's correct.
Are you aware in Dr. Abeg's report at page 335 that you, quote, conveyed a poor grasp of the seriousness of the evaluation or current life circumstances?
Yes.
Can you explain why that was at that time?
At the time, I had just had a domestic violence incident the day before, and I was very emotionally frazzled, and I wasn't able to completely be in the room with him. And so it took me a bit of time to get to where I could calm myself enough to honestly answer what he was asking me.
Now, there are statements that Dr. Abeg refers to from a Dr. Vogtson. Who's Dr. Vogtson?
Dr. Vogtson was the person that I rented my office from.
And prior to, how did that relationship end with Dr. Vogtson from a business practical standpoint?
Dr. Vogtson sent me an email saying, we don't want you back at the office. If you come back, we're going to call the board. For some reason, I never got that email. It went directly into my trash spam file. And I called him, and asked him, could I see someone in his office? And instantly, investigator showed up at the office. He kept asking me, "Are you sure? Are you sure you went to rent?" And I didn't understand why he kept asking me that. But then about 2 years later, I found the actual email in my trash bin in my Gmail, and it all made sense at that point.
Was Dr. Vogson, did he terminate the business relationship with you because he was fearful you were acting erratically and missing appointments or showing up on days when appointments weren't scheduled?
Yes, that would be the gist of it.
And that was with patients that you were treating?
Just one patient in particular, yes.
Were you not showing up for appointments or showing up erratically and missing appointments because you were abusing substances?
I was, and I missed one session with, I only had 3 patients at this office, and I missed a very important session with a patient that it was something that me and Dr. Aboig talked about as being a harmful thing that I had done under the influence.
And the substance you were abusing at that time was nitrous?
It was.
Are you aware of the dangers of nitrous oxide?
I wasn't. I was totally naive to them, and I couldn't understand how they sold it over the counter, and yet it was such a toxin. Now I'm very well versed in nitrous oxide, and I wish I had never, ever, ever touched it.
And what are the sometime long-lasting issues that nitrous oxide toxins can cause to someone who has used it that you've become aware of?
For me, it's been neurological damage, it's been memory loss, it's been hypoxia. It's had a significant negative deleterious effect on my walking, on my mobility, on my sensory perception. And it's a total poison, and I had no idea. And it was, it sent me off into a place that I never imagined that I could be. Right at the time that I just got my license, it was the worst timing ever.
Do you believe a licensed psychologist must have strong faculties in memory, able to use their sensory perception during interviewing patients, and having strong neurological abilities?
I absolutely do.
So you would agree that the use of nitrous oxide is counter to what a psychologist has to use to be able to be effective and treat patients?
Yes, in every way.
All right. Going back to Dr. Abeg's psychological testing, the results of the psychological testing that he mentions at page 336 showed that the psychological testing indicated you made a broad denial of drug use and or drug-related problems, which was in conflict with the statements you were making to Dr. Aboig. Can you explain to the board why there were issues with the testing he was doing and why those results would have shown a broad denial of drug use?
Yes, because at the time I was still engaging in drug use, and I was trying to present better than I was, and it came out in the testing as I was being misleading. And so it's just truly what it was. I was trying to have ownership of my substance abuse because I felt so much shame about it. But then, of course, it came out in the testing. And that was the day that we met. The second or third time, we got to talk about the findings and discuss why that was. And so.
Alcohol use. Can you tell me about the December 6, 1999 DUI? It's mentioned in the documentation as a .168 DUI. What were the circumstances of that?
That was in college. I had just graduated college. I was waiting for my future husband to graduate, and I was working as a domestic violence advocate. Me and one of my girlfriends went out drinking after a fight with the fiance, and I drank like I did in college. I was a binge drinker. I wouldn't eat anything, and I would drink, and I would throw up invariably. So I drank way too much. I didn't eat anything, and I tried to drive a block home with her in the car and got arrested. And it was it was a pivotal moment because I don't drink at all after that. It seems like I get arrested for alcohol at least, and then it was such a horrifying experience that it stopped me from drinking in the future.
And so it's your testimony that you haven't really had a problem with drinking alcohol since December of 1999?
Yeah, it's pretty much the most awful substance ever.
Prior to December of 1999, you had stated you were a binge drinker, and I think you'd agree with me that that would be potentially an indication of alcohol abuse. How long before 1999 had you been having issues with alcohol or binge drinking?
Maybe 3 years.
So a fair would be from like 1996 to 1999, something like that?
Yeah, in college, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right, let's turn to methamphetamine use. It's mentioned in Dr. Abweg's report that you started methamphetamine use, I believe, when you were 16 years old. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would have been the year 1992. And that was on and off again until, from what I could figure out, November of 2011. Does that sound correct?
That's correct.
How often did you use methamphetamine?
Let's see. I used methamphetamine probably once or twice a month.
And the last time you used methamphetamine was in November of 2011?
That's correct.
Did you ever describe yourself as a tweaker? I think that was in the report.
Unfortunately, yes, I did.
And from what you've learned in your education and research, what impacts can long-term methamphetamine use have on someone's neuropsychology?
I mean, it just basically rewires your entire brain and gives you anxiety and depression, and if you use too much, it can make you psychotic. And I'm surprised that I have all my teeth and my faculties still, because it's such a gnarly chemical that people that used with me said that I tended to not use very much because I was afraid of ODing, and I used it kind of to get stuff done, not to lose my mind. So it was just I kind of grew up in a family where drugs were kind of glorified, and so that didn't help at all when it came to using drugs later.
Would you ever recommend to a patient to use methamphetamine to get stuff done?
Absolutely not.
You'd say that no amount of methamphetamine is safe. Would that be fair?
There is no amount of nitrous oxide or methamphetamine that is safe. Yeah.
We've talked about your nitrous oxide use. I want to talk about benzodiazepines.
Okay.
Have you ever abused benzodiazepines?
Nope.
You have had prescriptions for benzodiazepines. If you could give me approximately how long you've had prescriptions on and off again for benzodiazepines.
I had it during the time I was writing my dissertation, and then I had them again when I moved in 2008 back to San Francisco from LA. And then I had them in 2012 around the time of the DUI. And then just recently, because of this situation and its anxiety-provoking nature, I have been prescribed Klonopin by my GP.
All right, let's talk about marijuana use. Now, have you first started using marijuana use in 1992? Is that fair?
Yeah, my parents decided it was the best thing to do is to have it come from home.
And since 1992, have you fairly regularly used marijuana?
Pretty much, yeah. Except at times like for studying for licensure exams or things where I needed my memory to be better, then I would quit.
Now, when you were interviewed by Special Investigator Walker in this case, I think you told her during the first interview that you were not using marijuana or alcohol because you were at the Napa Pain Institute. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then after the recorder was turned off, and she asked you to do a drug test, you confided in her that you had actually used marijuana 2 days before the interview. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you explain why you would make a statement to Special Investigator Walker, who is investigating on behalf of the board, that you were not using marijuana, and then change your statement and actually, after making that statement throughout that interview, change it to say that you were actually using marijuana?
Sure. For me, I had been speaking with my general practitioner and my neurologist months before. By the time I had met Curtis for the first round of probation, I was telling him that my doctors want me to get off of the opiates. And so I had a plan already in the making to transition from the opiates to the medical marijuana. And so by the time she asked me, I was eating gummies to try and get to where I am now, where I'm no longer a patient with Napa pain.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question here. My question to you specifically is, why would you tell Special Investigator Walker through an interview, a lengthy recorded interview, that you weren't using marijuana or alcohol, but as soon as the recorder was off and you were asked to perform a urine test, suddenly admit that you had actually used marijuana just 2 days before the interview?
Well, all I can speak to with that is that the Napa Pain Institute doesn't prescribe if you're using marijuana, and so I knew I was winding down to the very last few times I was ever going to be seeing them. And so I took over my own care by using medical marijuana as I transitioned off the opiates. That's all that.
Would you say that your statements to Investigator Walker during the interview, before you had acknowledged that you used marijuana 2 days earlier, those statements during the interview regarding your marijuana use were potentially false? Is that correct?
So that's correct.
Okay. And you're aware that Dr. Robweg confirmed that you were not safe to practice when that evaluation was completed?
The first round, yes, but then I went back a year later, and then I was tested over again, and then I was fit to practice. There's another report that I'm sure you guys have.
And then after you were determined fit to practice, that's when you picked up the 415 arrest?
Goodness, yes, that's exactly what happened.
And can you tell us the nature of that arrest?
I was calling my attorney, asking him, have they decided yet? Have they decided yet? And Attorney General Carr said, what? No one informed her? She's had her license for 2 weeks already. It's been reinstated. And I had no idea. And I was totally like in a crisis mode and living in the car and very stressed out. And so I bought more nitrous and then immediately got pulled over before I did any of it. And my attorney called the police officer and got it dismissed, but then informed Carr that this had happened. And so I just wasn't coping well then.
So in a stressful event, you actually went back and bought nitrous. Was your intent to use that nitrous?
It was, yes.
And you're aware that in order for Dr. Abeg in the first evaluation to find you safe to practice, that the conclusion was you needed psychotherapy, evaluation and monitoring for substance abuse, drug testing, and an immediate assessment by a neuropsychologist. Are you aware of that?
That's right, yes, I am.
Okay. None of those things have been done through the board. Is that fair?
Through the board, no, but on my own, yes.
And I'm going to ask it again. Through the board, have any of those things been done?
No.
What the board does have in its packet here, and I'll take back Dr. Abeg's report, unless you need to refer it later. Oh, that's okay. The board doesn't have any more psychotherapy notes aside from the ones that have been provided by you in this packet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the board doesn't have any evidence from you regarding how you'd be practicing because you have not practiced since you were placed on probation.
Not a day, right? That's correct.
And the board doesn't have notes or records from a comprehensive physical examination performed by the board in this packet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the board doesn't have a period of sustained abstinence as documented by drug or alcohol testing in this packet. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just by the Napa Pain Institute.
Which, as we've stated on the record, is not part of this packet.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you currently in NA or AA?
No, I'm not.
And why not?
I was in it for a long time, and I find it to be very triggery, and the relapse rate in NA is something that keeps me away.
I think you said that it's because it triggers you because it's full of former substance abuse using people?
True, and that I got a sponsor that to this day is still calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, sounding high, and it just is not something that I think I need to be around.
Would you be able to be on medical marijuana if you were in NA or AA?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think you probably would. You probably couldn't go to MA, Marijuana Anonymous, if you were still using medical marijuana. But I found that there is no amount of nitrous oxide or amphetamines that I want to use less of. There should be none, really. There's not a...
And that you've talked a lot about not being able to be employed because of insurance contracts. Have you attempted to volunteer with a psychologist and offer free services?
I haven't tried to do that. I haven't, no.
And you provided letters of recommendation from psychologists in your packet. You haven't approached any of them to try to work out where you would provide free services, so at the very least you could provide to the board that you're beginning a process to safely practice?
No, I mean, Dr. Polacek that runs Betty Ford said that he can't have me, he'd love to have me there, but they can't pay me, and so it's against their policy to hire me. If my license was off probation, he could hire me. But it's a liability to employ someone that is free.
All right. I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the board members have any questions at this point? Before we proceed with the board members, court reporter, are we okay, or do we need a break? Are we okay?
We're okay.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Okay. Do any of the board members have questions?
Good morning, almost good afternoon, Dr. Griffin. Do you consider yourself an addict?
I consider myself a substance abuser. I think addiction takes, to me, had a very high bottom, and I have had addictive tendencies, but I am able to stop myself and not use a great deal of it. It's just more of like a medication management, if that makes sense.
So were you ever a drug addict?
I was a substance abuser.
Okay. So are you currently taking oxycodone?
No, I just transitioned off of it in the hospital the other day.
You are using Klonopin and marijuana?
Yes.
Are there any other substances that could possibly be of concern that you're currently using?
There's a new one from transitioning off of the Percocet is the Tramadol, which is one I just started the other day, PRN for pain.
Are you aware whether that can be a drug of abuse or not?
I am aware of that, yes.
There was, in reading through all the paperwork, there was discussion of a website that you had that said you were a licensed psychologist after your license became inactive.
Right.
And if I understand correctly, it did not come down right away.
Right. I am not very technologically savvy and sophisticated. It took my 13-year-old stepson to actually show me how to take it down in a way that was right.
Okay, so there was a period of time where you were representing yourself to be a licensed psychologist and you weren't.
Right, and I thought that it was down, but when I checked, it wasn't. It was still up.
I noticed it in Ms. Walker's interview of you that in discussing the Napa Pain Institute, she said there was a period of 6 months in which you had not been drug tested by Napa Pain Institute.
Right, and I think that's an error on their part because it's happened before down through the years where they said that I didn't have a test when I clearly did and they found it.
Is there anybody that's consistently tested you for drugs and alcohol since you first went on to probation?
No, just them, because they wouldn't prescribe to me if I had anything in my system.
And they claim not to have consistently tested you across that time.
They claim to have tested me randomly.
Okay. But they said there was a period of 6 months where they had not tested.
Right, just towards the end, they did, yeah.
So there's been no period of time where you've been tested or had to test on a mandatory basis, checking in every day to see if you needed to take a test?
My understanding was I had to get employed in order to implement all of those things.
Okay. And why was your understanding based on that?
Because what I read from the STIP and what my attorney said is that you have to get employed, and then you can get a practice monitor, and then you can start testing with Quest Diagnostics, and then all the other things that I've not been able to meet, I can meet, but I have to get employed first. And that's been the critical issue is that I've never been able to get employed.
Are you aware that we have other probationers on similar terms and conditions who do manage to obtain employment?
No, I've in fact asked down through the years, Barbara Tanner, Curtis Gardner. I've watched numerous back to 2011 webcasts of this exact situation, and I never found anyone that had this situation. I've asked to find other people so I could ask them what they're doing, and they're not allowed to give names or anything. So there's just no services for people in this situation. I feel very isolated.
So you feel like it's a no-win situation?
I feel like it's a catch-22 that I can't win, and I've tried 100 different ways to get a job, and I was thinking it's the disability, it's anything, but really it's just that my current therapist told me, wow, it's weird that you have those probationary terms, because I've never seen that before, and don't they know that no one can pay your salary?
And yet we have probationers come before us that have jobs.
I would love to find out how that happened. I was under the impression that I was told that everyone that got in trouble had jobs, and so they didn't lose their job. And I was just looking for any kind of direction on how to actually obtain employment.
You are aware that our concern was substance abuse.
Absolutely.
And you are aware that we wanted you to go through several steps to prove to us that you're no longer a substance abuser.
That's right.
To be safe to work with consumers.
For sure.
And you have not done that.
I feel like I have.
But you haven't done it through our system.
That's right, because I wasn't able to get employed. If I could get employed, I would love to do all of those things. But since I haven't been able to get it, it's just been incredibly frustrating. If I had the secret key on how to get a job, I would do it tomorrow, but I have found no avenues that have been open to that.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few questions. Thank you for coming. Now, you did get a job with VeriCare, is that correct?
That was before I got on probation.
Okay. How long did you work for VeriCare?
Almost 2 years.
And I noticed that it said something about they questioned errors in your notes. Can you
Right.
tell me a little bit?
I got they gave me 57 new patients in a new facility, and then the very next day they terminated me based on clerical note errors, which to me it was because I was a whistleblower for their what I saw as being elder abuse reports that I had to make, and they warned me not to make any more abuse reports or I wouldn't have a job there. And I had to because I'm mandated. And so they fired me because of that and made it a clerical issue.
Okay. If I understand correctly, you stated to us that you could provide insurances to prevent anything catastrophic that could arrive if you were allowed to practice. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, like the basic insurance that we all have to carry for $1 million, that's not the insurance I'm talking about. I'm talking about the insurance like disability insurance or When I was younger, I didn't realize that all these things could potentially happen so soon. And so, an umbrella, something of a safety net kind of insurance to assist me in case something even worse happens in the future than what has already happened.
Okay, so that was more to protect you versus the consumers in California, which the board is here.
Well, by law, we have to have a certain, from before, it was $1 million of protection for the person coming to see me.
Right, right,
And that, of course, I would get.
yeah.
But just stuff to protect me in the long run in case, something happens. It seems like a better self-care.
Okay. I guess one of my concerns that maybe you could address is that if you did purchase the professional liability insurance, you believe that would protect the consumers based on some actions you might take that could be harmful. So could you just talk about how you see that as a guarantee of some sort to the board that you would be safe to practice?
I don't completely understand your question. Can you clarify it a little bit?
I don't think I phrased it well, so I apologize. I guess I'm trying to understand from your perspective that I think what I'm hearing you say is that it feels like if you purchased the professional liability insurance, that was some assurance to the board that there would be protection of California consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
And I think there would also need to be part of what Dr. Barnard suggested was to get me some coaching and some ongoing kind of overseeing help to make sure that I'm doing this right, because I think I need that. And since it's been so long that I've been in practice, I want to have a kind of a team that can help me with these kind of things.
Okay, I have one more question.
Okay.
I noticed on the exhibit that was passed out to us that you are taking a medication for muscle spasm.
Yes.
Starts with a T.
Tizanidine.
Tizanidine.
That's right.
Do you see any potential for addiction with that medication?
That medication I only use at night because when I use it in the daytime, it compromises my walking and makes my knees shift back. And so I don't really like taking it, but I have to in the nighttime for my shoulders and muscle spasticity. So the addiction potential is low because I want to walk better, and that makes it so I can't.
So it says twice daily, but you're taking it once daily.
Yeah,
in the evening.
at night, yeah.
Are there certain side effects besides what you're describing?
Just the shoulder stuff that I have going on, it does seem to help it. And I get massage therapy with the tizanidine, and it relieves me of some of those major knots that I have.
So you're saying you don't see any addiction potential for this?
Not just because it compromises my walking so much. It's not like something that gets you high. It's more of something to help my pain.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Bennett, I would like to ask some questions.
Yes, please proceed.
Dr. Griffin, one of the themes that I've noticed with regards your testimony and your answers to the Deputy Attorney General's questions is with regards truthfulness. So there were several instances throughout the probation process that you have not been truthful, and I'm just wondering, how can you assure the board that you are trustworthy and, truthful?
From my understanding, there was only one instance of being untruthful with Nicole Walker about the pain management and the marijuana. And phasing out the pain management with marijuana was my plan. And so I think I have a right to do that with my own health care. And so that was less of it was just like a mission. It wasn't to lie about it. It was just my plan to use medical marijuana instead of opiates. And so I see how it looks like it was a lie, but really it's just what my health plan was going to be. Was there any other times that I failed to be forthcoming that you can say?
Just from the Exhibit 55 as well with the, Dr. Abweg.
Oh, about the use of substances and then downplaying it?
That and also the license date type of kind of like errors and taking down the website and having it really not taken down and then eventually you're able to clarify it. But there has to be like some follow-up first or calling you out instead of like, for instance, if they ask you about what you're taking, you sometimes give different answers in terms of what you're under the influence of and what you aren't. So there's just several instances of that I've seen in several of the reports, either by the evaluator or by the board staff. So I just wanted to kind of like get your take on how you can show more proof of truthfulness.
Right, I understand your point. I think each specific instance is based on its own narrative, and they have their own specific situations. When I told Dr. Abweg that I was under representing my substance abuse, he said later that that's pretty normal, that people come in and they're nervous and they want to appear better than they are, and then the testing shows that you're actually not being honest, and so then you have to be forthcoming when he told me about that. And so I was trying to appear to look better than I was in that situation. And then with the board, with having my professional name out there, I really did truly think that I had done all that I could to get my name off of LinkedIn and off of the internet. And I'm just not incredibly sophisticated. And so they had to cite me because I thought I had finished it, truly, and I hadn't done it all. And so it was just my error. It really took a 13-year-old to show me how to do it, which is somewhat embarrassing. So,
can you speak a little bit about the wrong licensing date?
Yes, I put I wasn't paying attention, and I just put something together that I missed that as an error.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Griffin. I have a clarifying question. Just, you got your license in 2009?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And then, so it sounds like you worked from 2009 through 2014?
No, to 2012, and then I got disabled and didn't work.
Through 2012, and then you worked at Vericare for how long?
Almost 2 years, just shy of 2 years, and I worked in a private practice.
So the website was related to your private practice?
That's right.
Okay. And then your goal in requesting early termination, what is your game plan with that?
My game plan would be to have a very small private practice in the new town that I live in. I have fibromyalgia, which keeps me very tired all the time. And so I'm thinking maybe 5 people, like start very small. And do what I can. I don't want to go and get, a huge agency job or work where it's a lot of demand, because I'm still healing from the surgery I just had, and I just want to take baby steps with guidance and a therapist and a team to help me get to where I'm going.
So do you have, just so you know, like, because we need to protect the consumers, right? And as it relates to your website experience or being in private practice, I saw a comment in there where I believe your phone number or something was not working, and your response was just kind of like, and it's for continuity of patient care, right?
To me, it's the most frustrating thing that I couldn't log into my Gmail to change my phone number. It seemed so asinine and simple, but I had no idea how to do that, and I just barely recently learned how to go in, change it. You can't do it on your phone. You have to do it on a computer, and I didn't know that until very recently. And so it's been a huge embarrassment to me that I can't keep up with that, but now I know how to do it, and so my fears are...
Right, but there was your phone number that was not working, is that correct?
There was a considerable amount of time where my phone number had to keep being changed, and I wasn't updating it because I didn't know how to do it, but yes. And now it's totally taken down, and I'm going to update it with the new phone number if I'm allowed to get my license back again.
Thank you.
Yes, any further questions?
Hi, Dr. Griffin.
Hi.
Just a quick question. So you just mentioned, I think, in answer to Ms. Bernal's question of your desire for a private practice.
Yes.
I'm curious, how do you balance that that desire with also the recommendation to have, in many ways, a monitor for your practice and a professional support system, so that we can be assured that you can practice safely and address all the issues that we've raised here?
To me, it's what I want, is a therapist ongoing and a practice monitor, because that's going to make me successful in starting this process. Without that, I don't even want to do it. I just want, not only for the public safety, but for my own getting back and getting my little psychological wheels moving, I'm going to need a treatment team. I have a great therapist that's right close, and I can find another person who can help me with the other piece, and doing some consultation around that, because I think I have a lot of questions, and I want to be a different therapist than I was before. I have a totally different lease on life, and I want to just start small and take my time, but use the appropriate professionals to help me get to where I'm going. And what was really nice to hear was Dr. Van Oot, one of my teachers from graduate school, and Dr. Polacek, the guy that I did pre and postdoc with. They both said if anything ever happens, definitely reach out to them, and they can help guide me as well. So I think that it's essential and highly necessary for practice monitor as well as a therapist.
Thank you for that answer. And then the follow-up question is, you mentioned the difficulty in identifying employment
Yes.
when they do a license check.
Mhm.
Were you able to, from those responses, were you able to identify that it's because your license is inactive versus being on probation, or what because the way when you check it on a public website, folks may not understand the different taxonomies that we have. Because your license is inactive, because you aren't on probation or currently on fulfilling the terms of probation, is that something that was lifted up in terms of differentiating how perhaps you may be different than others who are on probation and currently employed?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard of anybody that had the same situation as mine, and I found it very defeating when I would ask Barbara Tanner or Curtis, like, what am I supposed to do? There's no other people. They would say I'm kind of in a class of my own, and that there's no resources to figure out how to do that. And so I watched webcasts to try and figure out if there was one person out there. But to me, can you go back to the first part of your question and ask it again?
I think you actually answered it.
Okay.
And one more question, I promise. When you say class of your own, could you share with me what that means?
It feels like if I could have had a job while I got the DUI, I could still be working. And so since I wasn't employed and I got in trouble, now I can't find employment. It's been about 4 months ago, I was the #1 ranked person in Sonoma County for an interview with the county. And I went. It was a great interview, and I didn't get the job. And they said, well, because your license is revoked. I'm like, but it says pending probation stayed. There was no argument that could happen. A lot of the other times, they wouldn't even give me an interview because they're like, your license is revoked. I'm like, but it isn't. It's just on probation. And so it was really hard to tease out and explain to employers what it is that I wanted to do and what I actually could do. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Just to follow up with a clarifying question, the language you're using in a class of my own, it sounds like that comes from somewhere, or did a prospective employer tell you that, or is that something you just figure out for yourself?
Well, I kind of started feeling that way after I didn't want to sign the stipulation in 2014 because I was telling my attorney, I don't think I can get a job. I've tried this before. I haven't been able to be employed. And he said, well, if you think you can get employed, then just sign it. And he kind of forced me into that. And so I feel like I'm in a class of my own because I don't have any guidance. I have never heard of anyone else that has the similar situation of being on probation with no job and actually getting one. And so I was left to feel from conversations with Barbara Tanner and with Curtis Gardner that we don't have I remember them saying almost verbatim, we don't have a bunch of probationers that have your similar circumstance. You just have to go out and find a job and meet the requirements, and that's just it. And so I felt it's isolating.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions by board members? Yes.
Dr. Griffin, I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a three. One, how would you describe your cognitive functioning?
I would describe it as getting better and better all the time. I just had a major surgery that I didn't realize that was making me so sick. My gallbladder was really infected, and it was affecting my energy levels. And I just recently got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which kind of it makes sense for why my energy's been so low. But now that it's been so many years of sobriety, I feel my brain coming back and like clicking and working. It's much more, I'm able to retrieve words better. I'm able to make coherent sentences. I'm able to present like I want to. And it's been a long road, but every year I get a little bit more acutely oriented in my thinking.
Can you talk about any areas that need improvement, particularly as it relates to?
Yes, I would say I sometimes get anxious, and I get sometimes get anxious, and I get flooded, and I can tend to talk too fast. And so today I'm really practicing my one word per breath talking. And so I think initially that's why I need a treatment team of a case monitor and a therapist, because it's going to be anxiety provoking getting back into the work. And so I want to be a different kind of professional than I was before, that's slower and more moderated. And so those are some of the challenges that I think.
Okay. And one last question. If your license is reinstated, and you mentioned that you're interested in starting a small private practice, what is your plan for managing the challenges of those? Because if you're going to be seeing patients, I'm also thinking that you might also be doing administrative work in terms of answering phone calls, scheduling patients, submitting claims. So what's your plan for managing the years of being in private practice if you're doing this on your own?
From before, it was easy for me to take the phone calls and do the necessary getting the person into the office. And then I had biller women that did the billing piece for me. And so that helped a lot with keeping it rolling. And so I'll have another team, so to speak, for the administrative piece.
That's all. Thank you.
Any further questions by board members? There do not appear to be any. Any further questions from the Attorney General?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Doctor, you mentioned that you had a witness you wish to call?
Yes, I did. I have a witness. I got 2 citations for administrative paperwork errors. I mailed in 2 quarterly reports, and they got lost. And so I got citations for them. Scott Klein actually was the person who took the piece of mail to the post office and put it in the box. And so my claim is that I mailed it in, but it was lost by the board. And so I just wanted to let the board know that once I got my first citation, I went over and above what, like getting monitors on my phone and alarms and 100 other things to make so that I could get them in on time. And so it's just proof that he was here, that he mailed them. So.
Okay, I'm not sure if that particular matter is before us today.
I was just thinking that if it did come up, he's here for that, but if it's not, no worries.
Okay, I don't think that's any matter that's before the board in this packet of material, so I don't see any particular need to go into that.
Yeah, and then behalf of the Attorney General's office, that's not really what we're concerned about. The citations are part of the record. Whether or not the mailings came in is fine, but really I think there's bigger issues for the board to take up regarding this petition.
Okay, we understand what you would, the offer of testimony, and I don't think that particular matter is particularly relevant to the board's deliberations today. Was that your only witness that you plan to call?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And at this point, I believe there are witnesses that the Attorney General's office would like to call. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes, I'd like to call two witnesses. I'd like to call Special Investigator Nicole Walker and Probation Monitor Curtis Gardner.
Okay, which one first?
I'll call Probation Monitor Curtis Gardner first, please.
Okay. Hold on. It occurred to me to ask if anyone wanted to take a break. This might be a perfect opportunity to take a break before this one starts. So why don't we take a 10, 15-minute break, however we can get back as expeditious as possible. Thank you.
That's fine.
We're off the record now, currently. Back on the record, and Mr. Gatchet has called a witness in this matter, Curtis Gardner, I believe, so I will turn it over to Mr. Gatchet.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gardner, could you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Curtis Gardner.
And could you spell the last name, please?
Yeah, last name Gardner.
And I believe, have we sworn him yet?
Not yet.
We probably should do that.
Okay. Mr. Gardner, do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that your testimony in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gardner, where are you employed?
I am currently the Board of Psychology's probation monitor.
And how long have you been in that role?
I have been in this role over 3 years.
Before coming to the Board of Psychology, were you employed anywhere else in the state of California?
Yes, I was previously employed with the Board of Registered Nursing as the probation monitor as well.
And can you tell us, what, in your role as a probation monitor for the last 3 years, the Board of Psychology, what that job entails?
Yeah, my job entails monitoring psychologists that have been administratively disciplined by being placed on probation under certain terms and conditions. So I ensure that they are meeting those terms and conditions.
And are you familiar with Dr. Griffin?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with Dr. Griffin?
I have met with Dr. Griffin previously and have corresponded, throughout my 3 years as the board's probation monitor with Dr. Griffin.
And we have a number of exhibits in the binder that have been admitted into evidence. I'll just ask, are you familiar with the terms and conditions of Dr. Griffin's probation?
Yes, I am.
And are you familiar with the decision and order that placed her license on probation with the board?
Yes, I am.
You wrote 2 probation reports that are included with the probation documents that are before the board. When you wrote those probation reports, had you reviewed the terms and conditions and decision and order as part of drafting those reports?
Yes.
What are the terms and conditions the petitioner has complied with while being on probation?
I'm going to have to turn to my report.
Would looking at your report help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you have a report at page...
Exhibit 54.
I think that's the final one. If referring to that report would refresh your recollection with the court's permission, please do so.
Yeah, please do so.
You want me to go over each condition and say they've met them or not, or just the ones that she's completed?
Just the one she's complied with.
Condition 7 has been completed. That's the investigation cost recovery. Quarterly reports is still ongoing. Pretty much the other ones are not ones that would be completed, per se.
All right. Let's talk about some of the terms that haven't been completed. The physical examination through the board, what does that entail?
That entails being examined by a licensed physician and surgeon who basically evaluates the individual on probation to ensure that if they are physically safe to practice psychology with safety to the public.
And as part of that physical examination, can that licensed physician or surgeon make additional referrals if there needs to be additional testing to ensure that the licensee or the probationer is safe to practice?
Yes, if they recommend any treatment or any additional testing, that would also be implemented as well.
And that term has never been completed with the board, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, the practice monitor term, what does that term entail?
So this term entails having a practice monitor entails the probationer to find a licensed California psychologist who monitors their practice to ensure that they're practicing, you know, in professional standards and for public safety.
And has that term ever been complied with the board?
No, it has not.
And so we have no documentation about whether or not the licensee is safe to practice through the lens of an independent practice monitor reviewing her work.
Correct.
In terms of psychotherapy through the board, how does the board go about setting up that term for a licensee?
Yes, so the individual on probation would nominate a California licensed psychologist that meets criteria, meaning they can't have a prior relationship with them or be their practice monitor, and they submit to the board a treatment plan, what treatment goals would be in psychotherapy, and they would also, you know, if they were approved to be their psychotherapist, submit quarterly reports addressing the progress of meeting those treatment goals, and if they were safe to practice.
During testimony of the petitioner, she stated that Chris Hodson, PhD, was approved by the board to provide that psychotherapy from 2013 to 2015. Is that correct?
No, it is not.
Has she ever had a psychotherapist that was approved through the board to provide psychotherapy?
No, she has not.
And so when she referenced Chris Hodson, Dr. Hodson, and then when she referenced Dr. Bernard, those were psychotherapists that she sought out on her own. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Dr. Bernard was not a psychotherapist that was approved by the board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In reviewing the probation file, in fact, the only psychotherapist that interviewed or reviewed this petitioner was Dr. Abog on behalf of the board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Let's talk about the term of ongoing treatment, substance abuse treatment, and submitting to testing for alcohol or drugs as part of urine sample testing for the board. What does that entail?
The ongoing treatment program is attending weekly 12-step meetings, and it's kind of based on a number of things, such as, you know, any recommendations that are made in the physical condition that would then be a part of the treatment program, or, you know, seeing a therapist that specializes in substance abuse that could be used to meet that condition. Abstaining from drugs and alcohol and submitting to tests and samples. Each day, an individual that has this condition needs to check into a program to see if they've been selected for random drug testing. If they were, they would have to submit to it.
And at any point, has the petitioner, in the time that she's been on probation with the board, provided evidence of going to 12-step meetings as part of ongoing treatment?
No, she has not.
And at any point while she's been on probation, has she undergone drug and alcohol testing as required by the board?
No, she has not.
Has the petitioner completed any time on probation?
No.
And why not?
Her probation has been told since the onset of her probation.
What is probation tolling?
Tolling is if you reside or practice out of the state of California, your probation would be tolled. Or if you reside in California but do not practice, your probation is tolled. And tolling is basically just a pause. Any time that it's tolled would then be added to the end.
And so at this point, in your review of the probation file, is there any time that her probation is currently set to expire?
No, there is not.
Now, she testified, the petitioner testified that she was prevented from complying with the terms of probation because she has not gotten employment or received employment. Is she prevented from voluntarily complying with some of these terms in order to show to the board that she's trying to work through probation?
No, she's not.
So she could voluntarily get in a drug and alcohol testing program?
Yes, she can.
And she could voluntarily do 12-step meetings?
Yes, she can.
She testified that there's no way for her to gain gainful employment while on probation. Do you have probationers who are employed?
Yes, I do.
Would you be able to approximate how many are employed that are on probation?
I'd say currently we have about 44 active probationers, and each would be employed.
I want to bring your attention to Exhibit 43, page 133.
Okay.
It's an email that you sent to Dr. Griffin September 21st, 2018. Do you recognize this email?
Yes, I do.
What was the nature of this email about?
A misrepresentation of her license status.
At the time you sent this email to her, how long had her license been on inactive status?
She was placed on probation in 2014, so by this point it would be approximately 4 years.
And what were your concerns regarding the websites that you mentioned in this email?
That she was still advertising to the public that she was a licensed psychologist.
And was it concerning to you that approximately 3 years had gone by when you sent out this email and there were still these references online regarding her as a psychologist?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because it's misrepresenting to the public that she is a licensed psychologist and can provide services to them.
All right. I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Doctor, do you have any questions of this witness?
When you said that you had probationers that are 40 people that are, oh, sorry, you have 40 people that are on probation. Did any of them have jobs or not have jobs when they got put on probation?
I couldn't say for certain, but I've had individuals on probation who have changed jobs or gotten different jobs.
Probably within the same company or something, because the problem I've had is just getting employment at all. If I would have been employed when I got in trouble, I would have been able to keep my job.
Okay. Yes. Doctor, you have to frame questions. You cannot make statements.
Okay. Well,
you have to ask the witness. The witness is here to answer questions, to provide information in response to questions.
okay. Are you familiar with any probationers that have the similar circumstances that I do, where they can't find employment? Is that something else that people are going through?
I don't think I understand your question.
Are there other probationers that have the same exact situation that I have, where they can't find employment?
I would say I do have some probationers that are told that would have problems gaining employment due to probation, yes.
Okay.
Anything further, Doctor?
No. Thank you.
Board members have any questions? Okay, no questions from board members. One clarification. Did you say Dr. Abweg?
Abweg?
Yeah, that he was approved?
Dr. Abweg completed a 820 examination on Dr. Griffin prior to her being placed on probation.
Oh, okay. So That's prior to being placed on probation. Okay.
He was the only one that was approved to provide, the board insight into her ability to safely practice.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Nothing further from this witness? Okay, thank you. You may be excused. And Mr. Gatchett, you have another witness.
And this one will even be shorter than the first witness. I would call Special Investigator Nicole Walker, please.
Ms. Walker, do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that your testimony in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please be seated. Counsel, your witness.
Ms. Walker, can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Nicole Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R.
And Ms. Walker, where are you employed?
The Board of Psychology.
And in what role are you employed by the Board of Psychology?
I am employed as a special investigator.
How long have you been a special investigator with the Board of Psychology?
Approximately a year and a half.
And before taking that role with the Board of Psychology, were you employed anywhere else in the state of California?
Yes, prior to that, I was employed by the Office of Inspector General, which is the oversight agency for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I worked in the use of force, and that was in Bakersfield. And prior to that, over the last 5 years, I worked as a special investigator for the Board of Psychology, the Emergency Medical Services Authority, and also the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians.
In the year and a half that you've been a special investigator with the Board of Psychology, what has that job entailed?
So it entails, I conduct unbiased administrative investigations of professional licensees of the Board of Psychology. I also conduct background investigations for petition for reinstatement cases, also early termination and or modification of probation. The investigation can consist of gathering evidence, interviewing complainants, petitioners, subjects, witnesses, and I also gather, identify, and review a variety of documents, including patient records, and I do draft a investigative report that will provide a detailed findings of the investigation.
And as part of, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with petitioner Dr. Molly Griffin?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with her?
On August 23rd of 2019, I actually was assigned Dr. O'Griffin's case to conduct a background investigation because she had petitioned the board for early termination of probation.
And did you have a chance to interview her on 2 occasions as part of that investigation? I believe it's November 20th, 2019 and December 30th, 2019?
Yes, I did.
And in part of the witness binder in front of you, we have 2 exhibits, which are the interview transcripts from those interviews, and they are Exhibit 50, which is December 30th, 2019, and Exhibit 48, which is November 20th, 2019. Did you have a chance to review those 2 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
And are they accurate based on your recollection of your conversation with the petitioner?
Yes, they are.
I want to just ask, when you interviewed her on November of 20th of 2019, did she provide you with a medical marijuana card on that date?
No, she did not.
Or medical marijuana recommendation paperwork on that date?
No, she did not.
Did she at some later point provide you with medical marijuana recommendation card or paperwork at some later point?
Yes, she did. I conducted a follow-up interview with Dr. O'Griffin, and I believe that was December 30th of 2019. And during that time, she had indicated that there was additional documentation that she had, which would include documentation of a medical marijuana prescription.
And was that documentation dated after the November 20th, 2019 interview?
Yes, it was.
All right, and then the other part I wanted to ask you about, Exhibit 43, page 133. It's an email that we just talked about with Mr. Curtis Gardner.
Yes.
Did you interview the petitioner about her websites when you talked to her on November 20th, 2019?
Yes, I did.
And when you first asked her whether her websites were in compliance, what was her response to you?
If I recall, she indicated that she was in compliance.
Did she ever, and I think it's in your report, let me find your report. One moment. You asked her some questions about whether she had removed the websites or that whether she was directed to remove the websites during that interview on November 20th of 2019. Do you remember what her response was?
Initially, I believe she indicated that she had removed the websites. However, I also recall later in the interview, she indicated she was unfamiliar with the email, and I had the email with me that day, and I actually showed her a copy of the email that was sent to her from Mr. Gardner.
And so when you were interviewing her on November of 2019, that was more than a year later after the email from September 21st of 2018, and this was still an issue regarding the information on the websites regarding her practice and her ability to practice. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions to this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Okay. Thank you. You may be excused as witness.
I don't know if the petitioner had any questions.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. Does the petitioner have any questions?
That was a very thorough understanding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have no further witnesses. Thank you, Your Honor.
No further witnesses. Okay, are the parties ready to make a closing argument in this matter?
Yes, I'd make a brief closing on behalf of the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
In this matter, it is commendable that the petitioner has righted her life. Where she was at the time that her license was placed on probation was a very dark place. I think that's very evident from this packet. However, there is a big but here. The board has absolutely no evidence in this packet that she's safe to practice. And so terminating her probation without having her complied with board probation places the public at risk. And so while I commend her for the efforts that she's made, we just do not have the evidence that's sufficient for her request, which is to terminate probation without ever having done any of the main terms of probation, proving to this board that she's not abusing substances, proving to this board that she's safe to practice, proving to this board by a licensed physician or surgeon and potentially a referral to a neuropsychologist that she's safe to practice. And until that's been done, really her probation is left in limbo, and that's to protect the public so that she's not practicing until she's able to start doing those terms. And with that, I'll submit.
Thank you. Doctor?
My final piece is that I would love to complete all of the probationary terms. That would be my goal in life, but it's been so difficult trying to find a job that it feels like I can't meet them. And so I'd love to have some sort of avenue that can show me the right way to get it done so that I can be successful. Because right now it feels like I'm stuck in a catch-22 where I can't find the way to get out of this situation in a positive way. So with that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Griffin. That concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The record is closed. The case is submitted and we're off the record. But before we go off the record, I just want to make sure that the parties are aware that if they wish a hearing of the transcript, there's a form that the court reporter has that you need to pick up from the court reporter. Thanks again, and we're off the record. The record is closed.
Thank you.
Do you think keep my name tag?
The board will recess for lunch and return at 2 p.m. Good afternoon. We're going to bring the Board of Psychology back into session. Before I turn this over to Judge Bennett, I think just for an outline of the rest of the day's proceedings is we will have our current petition hearing here today. The board will then go into closed session to discuss the cases, and then the board will recess for the remainder of the day after the closed session. At that time, Dr. Harpsheets, as chair of the licensure committee, will gavel in for the licensure committee, then gavel us into closed session to discuss another matter, close that out, and we will reconvene tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. So that is the rest of the day ahead for us. Judge Bennett.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Wilbert Bennett. I'm an administrator. Let me make sure that everything is on here. Thank you. My name is Wilbert Bennett. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to sit with the board in the hearing of this matter and to prepare a written decision setting forth the reasons supporting the board's decision. In this proceeding, the board is concerned with hearing about any rehabilitation since the petitioner's license was disciplined. The Deputy Attorney General will proceed first to submit the petition for early termination of probation, and I might add also that this petition for early termination and/or modification of probation bears the Board of Psychology case number 600-201-9-000580 and Office of Administrative Hearings number 2019-121-048. As I indicated just a few minutes ago, the Deputy Attorney General will proceed first to submit the petition into evidence, as well as any materials attached to or supporting the petition. And the Deputy Attorney General will also provide a case summary in this matter. And after that, the petitioner will then have an opportunity to make a presentation. As a reminder, the board has had the benefit of reading the petition package, and the petitioner does not have to repeat anything that's in that package unless it has bearing on his presentation of rehabilitation. After that, the petitioner will be subject to questioning after his testimony by both the board members and the Deputy Attorney General. After the hearing, the board will go into closed session to deliberate, and the petitioner will not receive a decision today, but will receive it in the mail sometime in the future. And again, referencing the board's guidelines for argument in matters of this nature, the testimony and evidence should focus on evidence of rehabilitation and why the petitioner no longer presents a risk to reoffend. And this is not a place to rehash the matters involved in the previous decision, unless to the extent they might have a bearing on rehabilitation. At this point, then, I would turn the matter over to the Deputy Attorney General, who is appearing pursuant to Government Code Section 11522. Please, counsel, please proceed.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor. John Gatchett on behalf of the Attorney General's Office, G-A-T-S-C-H-E-T. And then seated to my left here at counsel table is Dr. Craig, the petitioner in this case, C-R-A-I-G. The overview of the case is that we have a decision in order December 17, 2015, that came after a statement of issues. Petitioner had filed with the board for a psychological assistant registration, and he had some background that he brought to the board when he had that license application. He had a September 2001 vandalism while intoxicated conviction. He had a 2008 public intoxication conviction. And he had a 2013 DUI, which the underlying facts were a .14 DUI in December of 2012. The board granted him licensure on a 5-year probation with terms and conditions, and that became, as I stated, effective December 17, 2015. He is in full compliance with his terms and conditions of probation, and he has satisfied all terms of probation. He had 1 citation for a missed check-in for urine testing in July 22, 2018. He has paid that fine in full. He became a fully licensed psychologist while on probation with the board on October 25, 2018, and he is projected to complete probation December 17th of this year, so in approximately 10 months. So that's our overview of the case. And Your Honor, with your permission, I'll go into the exhibits. I'll identify all the exhibits and then ask they be admitted and then turn it over to the petitioner.
Yes, please proceed, counsel.
Exhibit 1 is the notice of hearing. Exhibit 2 is the certificate of licensure for Dr. Craig. Exhibit 3 is the decision and order in this matter. Exhibit 4 is the citation I alluded to that was issued in 2018. Exhibit 5 is petitioner's petition for early termination with narrative statement. Exhibit 6 is a letter of recommendation from a Dr. Andrew Mendonza, M-E-N-D-O-N-S-A, and I would note that Dr. Mendonza is present here at this hearing today in support of the petitioner. Exhibit 7 is a therapy information sheet provided to the board by Dr. Diana Corzo, C-O-R-Z-O. Exhibit 8 is a therapy information sheet provided by a Dr. Tony Angelo, A-N-G-E-L-O. I would note that Dr. Angelo is present here in the hearing today in support of the petitioner. We have the practice monitor information sheet, Exhibit 9, from Dr. Shiloh Kentanesi. Exhibit 10, Exhibit 11, and Exhibit 12 are authorizations for release of records from the practitioners I stated before. Exhibit 13 is the face sheet for the probation file in this matter. Exhibit 14 are the status report probation profiles. Exhibit 15 are correspondence with probation by petitioner. Exhibit 16 are probation intake documentation documents. Exhibit 17 are chronological record and quarterly reports comprise the probation file. Exhibit 18 are drug screening reports for the petitioner. Exhibit 19 is prescription information provided by the petitioner to probation. Exhibit 20 are proof of 12-step meetings by the petitioner. Exhibit 21 is psychotherapy information. And I'm going to ask that Exhibit 21, be subject to a sealing order, which I showed a copy of to petitioner before we went on the record, and the court has a copy of that. So that's Exhibit 21. I ask that be subject at the conclusion of the admission. Exhibit 22 are documents related to rehabilitation through the DUI program. Exhibit 23 is a psychological evaluation conducted by the board of the petitioner. And once again, I'd ask that be subject to the sealing order to protect confidential records. Exhibit 24 is coursework conducted by the petitioner. Exhibit 25 are costs and receipts showing that he is paid in full. Exhibit 26 is the probation violation, which I alluded to, the citation, which is paid in full. Exhibit 27 are probation monitor documents. And finally, Exhibit 28 is a probation report dated December 30th, 2019, summarizing Curtis Gardner's review of Petitioner Craig, Dr. Craig's petition and probation file. At this time, I'd ask those exhibits be marked for identification and admitted into evidence, with Exhibits 21 and 23 subject to that sealing order.
Any objection, Dr. Craig?
No, sir.
Okay. Each of the exhibits offered by the Attorney General will be admitted into evidence, and the protective order sealing confidential records, specifically exhibits 21 and 23, will be granted. And my understanding, Dr. Craig, is that you have been served with a copy of the protective order and you're in agreement with it.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So with that, again, all of the documents identified by the Attorney General will be admitted into evidence, and the motion for protective order is granted with respect to exhibits 21 and 23. At this point, Dr. Craig, this is your opportunity to present your case. You may testify on your own behalf. You may call witnesses if you so choose. You are reminded that the board has had the benefit of your petition package, so there is no need to repeat anything in that package unless it ties in with the rehabilitation presentation that you're offering. Do you have any additional documents you would like to present?
No, sir.
Do you have any witnesses that you would like to call on your behalf?
No, sir.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to swear you in as a witness. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that your testimony in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay, doctor, please proceed.
All right, I'm going to have to do a little editing on this because a lot of this was already presented, so I'll do my best here. But ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for your time and allowing me to be here.
Okay. Make sure you don't read too fast because the court reporter is trying to take all this down.
Okay.
And keep your voice up.
All right, yes.
And I note you have all the time in the world, so just take your time.
Take your time.
I come before you asking you to grant my petition for early termination of probation. I believe I have taken steps to rehabilitate myself and can safely practice psychology. It is embarrassing, and I'm filled with shame and regret hearing these things.
Yes, you have to slow down, and we have all the time in the world.
Okay.
Okay.
That, like when you're reading, that tends to make things faster, so just be kind of like cognizant of that.
All right.
Thank you.
It's embarrassing, and I'm filled with shame and with regret hearing all these things that led to the situation that I'm in. I do think it's important to note, though, that this all happened prior to my practice of psychology. I've been on probation for over 4 years now. It's been 7 years since my last arrest, and even saying my last arrest is embarrassing. But I have taken steps, and I've been compliant over these last at least 4 years, which included a year of treatment, ongoing weekly AA meetings, random drug and alcohol tests. I counted them up this morning. I've had 206 drug tests, which include about, I think, 5 or 6 blood draws as well, and they have all been negative. As of today, I have 1,562 days of sobriety. There was that one incident where I just simply forgot to check in that morning. No excuses, and there was a lot of personal things going on. My wife's uncle had died that weekend, and my mind was just off. But even taking that, instead of compounding it and making it worse, I took steps to prevent that from happening again. There's a function on the phone, on the app, where I was able to set a reminder to check in every day. So I went and did that, and so I've had no problems since then. But I believe that, that I've shown over these last 4 years that I've complied and I've worked towards rehabilitation. When I look at things that we mark for pro-social engagement and things that reduce the risk of recidivism or reoffending, I look at employment and education are two major factors. Since I was placed on probation, I've completed grad school. I worked towards, I took the EPPP and the CPLEE, passed both, finished my time. So I've continued my education. I've been employed with the same company for over 6 years now. And not only have I been employed, but I've also been able to be promoted into various stages, positions of leadership, which I think speaks well. Actually, Drs. Angelo and Mendonzo, who are here, purchased the company that I work for last year, and they've entrusted me in a position of leadership in their company, and I don't take that lightly. Not only professionally, but personally, I think I've made great steps. Since all this behavior, I've become a father. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I know it might sound cliche, but that moment that she was born changed me, and changed me for the better. I definitely welcome the responsibility of fatherhood. I know that I needed to start making better decisions and acting more mature to be a good example for her. But I'm actively involved in her life as well, in school, father-daughter dance. I coached her soccer team. Never played soccer before in my life. And trying to coach a bunch of 4- and 5-year-olds was a task, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's those things that I want to be around for and be present for. Not only that, but my relationship with my family they're a tremendous amount of support for me. My parents, my sisters, brother-in-laws. I can't speak highly enough of the support that they've given me, and that I've worked to rekindle those relationships and make sure that I can lean on them for the support that I need. Not only that, but friends. I've gotten rid of those bad influence, so to speak, and I really only spend time with those friends who I share values with and who are close. And actually, a good friend of mine, a deputy down south in Southern California, I am the godfather to his 2-year-old son. And my sister-in-law, my niece and nephew, I am their godfather as well. So personally, I like to say that people trust me to be role models for their children, to be present in their lives. And I think that also speaks to who I am and how I like to live my life. Like I said, it's embarrassing to sit before you and have to answer to these charges and to face those things that I've done. But I did them, and I own them. My responsibility, poor decisions that I've made. But I've worked to rectify that. I've worked to prove that that's not how I want to live my life anymore. This is almost an opportunity. This is an opportunity. I've looked at this, although it wasn't ideal and I wouldn't have chosen to go through this. It's forced me to take a look at my life and to grow professionally, spiritually, socially, and I think I have. I think I've demonstrated that just by the amount of support that I have present in my life. So I've taken those steps. And this isn't the end of my growth. Just because probation ends doesn't mean that I'm done with this. I believe that this is a lifelong journey that I will continue to engage in so that I can continue to grow and improve myself personally, spiritually, and professionally. I've taken steps to rehabilitation, and I believe that I can practice psychology safely. I would not be a danger, I would not be a harm to those consumers, to the public. I'm sober, responsible, and competent. I thank you for your time.
Okay, just a clarifying question. How many days of sobriety did you say?
1,562,
And what is your sobriety date?
November 18th, 2013.
2013.
13.
And one clarifying question, you were convicted back in 2013, correct?
I'm sorry, 2015. Sorry.
I'm sorry, your sobriety date is November?
November 18th, 2015.
2015, correct, okay. You were convicted in 2013 of public intoxication, correct? Or DUI, I'm sorry.
Yes, the conviction was 2013. The arrest was 2012, and the conviction was 2013.
And you commenced your employment with Sharper Future in 2013, correct?
I started as a practicum student that year. Official employment, I think, was a little, might have been 2014.
Okay, you were not employed
With Sharper Future at the time of the incident, no.
when the incident occurred? Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. Counsel, cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Dr. Craig, could you tell us what your practice looks like today?
Well, today I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for Sharper Future, which means that I oversee the clinical implementation of services for our company across the state. So I do a lot of traveling, but just making sure that our clinicians in our company are behaving ethically, are keeping accurate records, that they're operating within legal and contractual guidelines. And then I also see patients, clients, when needed. So we have multiple contracts where we do mainly forensic psychology. So we have various contracts with governmental agencies.
And so your sobriety date, to be clear, November 18th, 2015?
Yes.
Okay. If probation ends, and it is going to end in December if everything goes well, or end earlier if the board grants your petition, what's your plan going forward regarding whether you'll return to the use of alcohol?
My plan, as of today, is I have no plan to return to drinking alcohol. My life is good right now, and I don't see any reason why I'd want to mess with that.
And then probation being terminated, what would be generally your relapse prevention plan to prevent going and returning to drinking?
Well, I've developed a good AA support system. I like the home group that I found. I have one gentleman in particular, but I have a group of 3 from AA that I rely on, that we are in weekly communication with each other, and so they would be a huge support for me and the program.
And do you have any resources at your organization where you work that would also provide support?
Oh, yes. I said Drs. Angelo and Mendonza are here today. They're well aware of my situation. They've made themselves available for me to talk with them. And like I said, I also have other friends outside of the program that I can reach out to. I have family who keep me my parents are both retired police officers, so they keep me in line. So I have a wealth of support that I can reach out to.
I know that probation can be difficult. I know that it places a lot of restrictions on your life and your job. It's a time requirement. What have you learned from being on probation that you can apply going forward?
Wow. I've really learned how to prioritize. I've learned how to stay focused and not catastrophize, really. I've learned that I have a larger support system than I ever thought I had. And that there's no shame and there's no harm in reaching out for connections, even for the littlest things. Yeah, but I've also realized that kind of what's important in life, and I've learned about myself that I like who I am, and I like living with myself, and I don't need to try to prove my worth to those people that aren't worth proving it to, if that makes sense.
All right. In the AA process, I'm assuming you finished all the steps.
Yes, sir.
When you made amends, who did you make amends to?
Well, my parents were, I hurt them deeply. So my parents, my sister, my wife.
What was that process like for you?
One of the hardest things that I've had to do. It's not easy. It's not easy for me to admit I'm wrong. Not only admit I'm wrong, but then also apologize on top of that for things. But I've learned that I think if it's just through humility, I've humbled myself, and I've been willing to eat crow, so to speak, and I think when you take responsibility, I've experienced people that are willing to forgive.
Fair to say you wouldn't want to go through that process again?
That is very fair to say.
Two last questions. I always ask these difficult questions. So, what will you be able to impart to your patients by going through this process?
Well, there's a lot of parallel processes and some things that I work through with supervision during this time, but we work with a lot of mandated clients who complain about the process and what they have to do and all the stipulations and conditions and things. So having gone through this, I'm able to empathize with them and help them to work through their own resistance at that. And then also just achieving sobriety and the difficulty of that. I can understand and identify with clients who, I see a lot of substance abuse disorders. I mean, almost everybody that I see. So having been able to work through that myself, it makes it, I think, a little easier to identify with clients and patients who are struggling with that in themselves.
And then final question, what about this process will you be able to impart to the clinicians that you supervise?
Well, definitely try to challenge and warn them about the difficulties that come with bad decisions, and definitely understanding that I'm hearing Dr. Angela's voice in my head. Poor decisions take us farther than we want to go, cost us more than we were willing to pay, and keep us there longer than we wanted to stay. So no matter when these things happen, we can't outrun our past. And so to make sure that we are upholding the charge that we've been given, and that it is important work that we do, and it's important to make sure that we are practicing safely for the benefit of the public.
I have no further questions for the witness. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kirk, just one clarifying question. you may have coined a phrase, I'm not sure, but what did you mean when you said you've learned how to not catastrophize?
Catastrophize is a psychological term. It's a cognitive distortion. So a lot of times when we make seemingly small things into big issues. And so I've kind of learned to just more take life on life's terms, to coin an AA saying, and not make things a bigger deal than they need to be.
Okay, any board members have questions?
Thank you for being so candid. I'm wondering, now that you're at this point in your recovery, what do you understand about the choices you made, your motivations for making those early choices?
I think a lot of the motivation was seeking approval from peers. There was just always been something that I was always academically inclined, and so kind of got attention for that, but for whatever reason, that wasn't good enough. I always wanted to be seen as cool. I always wanted to fit in with people who didn't care about the academic portion of things. So I think that was just kind of doing stupid stunts or being crazier just to gain approval, and that's kind of what I was mentioning a little bit earlier, is trying to get approval from people whose approval I don't need. So I think that was a big motivation. A big motivation as well was just the way I thought about myself. The term that stuck with me through AA is we're egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. So I think very highly of myself, but then I also, at the same time, think that I'm not worthy of a lot of things. And so I've had to work through that and being comfortable with who I am and being okay with, this is who I am. These are the things that I like. These are my talents, and being okay with that, and really understanding that the friends that I have, the close friends that have stuck by my side, are the ones that don't need me to be on all the time or do crazy things. They're the ones that want me to be around and be godfather and be friend. And for whatever reason, it took my 20s for me to understand that. But now that I'm in my 30s and approaching 40, I guess I'm just a slow learner or a hard learner, but I think that's what I've seen about my motivations.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Hi, Dr. Craig.
Hello.
Would you identify yourself as an alcoholic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and do you intend to continue in AA?
Yes, sir.
How often do you go to AA meetings?
At least weekly. Occasionally, I'll throw in another 2 or 3, or another meeting or two.
And what would prompt you to throw in additional meetings?
A lot of times it's time, or there's been occasions where I've kind of felt loneliness, or just kind of, a lot of times, a desire to drink. It doesn't usually come in the form of like, I'm craving a drink, I got to get one right now, but it usually some of those antecedents that I've been able to identify. I've been traveling quite a bit, and so a lot of times if I'll be in the hotel room or something and I start feeling a little bit lonely, it's nice to I've been able to find AA meetings in the middle of the night. And so that's kind of what prompts me a little times. It's just like kind of situationally, if I'm kind of feeling something, I'll try to make it to another meeting.
Sounds like a healthy instinct. Do you have a sponsor?
I do not have a sponsor.
Okay, and why is that?
It's a good question. I've been challenged to have a sponsor. I think that I've found, I've worked through the steps, not with a sponsor, but with kind of peers, and it's been working for me. It is something that I think it's fear. I think I'm scared to open up to somebody else about things, to be honest.
Sounds fair. One of the things that you mentioned was this kind of egomaniac with an inferiority complex. Have you ever heard the phrase, I'm a piece of excrement That the world revolves around?
I heard that, but no, okay, I like that, yes.
Pretty popular today. I'm also a member of the program. And I have one final question for you, and it's a very serious one. What is a float lounge?
Oh, I did put that. So it's pretty cool. It's it's basically like a relaxation place. So you get into it's a deprivation chamber.
Oh.
Filled with water. So you get in and it's filled with salt. So you lay in the water and you float, but there's no sound or lights or anything. And you basically, for an hour and a half, kind of just meditate and relax.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Oh, yes.
Hi, Dr. Craig. It was mentioned in Mr. Gatch's questioning about supervision. Could you clarify what supervisorial duties you have, and do those duties include supervising psychological assistance?
I don't currently supervise anybody. The probationary status prevents me from doing that. I assumed he was asking in the future if I were to supervise people. But I do have people, because of my position at work, I am in a position of leadership, but I don't necessarily do supervision for psychology purpose, for the board purposes, as far as like getting psych registrations or students or anything. It's more of a leadership position.
Perfect. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Can I clarify something?
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to clarify, when you were talking with Dr. Phillips and you mentioned that when you do travel, if you start to feel lonely, which I imagine is a trigger for you, that you may look up a meeting, attend a meeting, then do you have any other strategies you use for those times that you travel and there may be other triggers?
Well, if I'm in a place that I'm a member of 24-Hour Fitness, so I like to go find the gym. That's also very helpful. I'm a foodie, so one of the things that I really like is I like to find new places to eat. So that's definitely been a fun adventure, finding new places. I like to read, so I usually have a book, either digital on my phone or there are still hard copy books that I have a couple of. So there's a couple things that I do like to do. Call home, maybe try to, depending on the hour, try to talk to my daughter. I usually like that. But so there's a couple other things that I try to do.
Thank you.
Any further questions by board members? Any further questions from the Attorney General's office?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Are the parties ready to make any closing remarks on this matter?
Attorney General's offices, are you ready to close?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're both ready here.
Closing arguments.
Your Honor, I'll be brief. This is a pretty strong petition, so I don't see any real issues at this point concerning in terms of public safety with this petitioner. Attorney General's office is going to submit on his petition.
Dr. Craig?
I thank you for your time. I guess that's all I have.
So you submit. You will submit at this time.
I will submit.
Made your presentation.
I will submit.
Your presentation is complete.
I'm complete, yes, sir.
Okay, great. That being said, I'm going to say this, the record is closed, the case is submitted, and we're off the record in this matter, except I do want it noted that the court reporter has a form that she will distribute in case either party wants to have a transcript of this matter. And she will pass that out before we leave today. That being said, the record is closed, the case is submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge Bennett. And the board will recess for 5 minutes for a break, and then we'll come back for closed session.